Everyone. First of all, I would really like to thank our hosts yesterday for a wonderful reception and a great dinner. I guess you agree with me on that. I'm very happy to be here today. Vietnam is a country of great natural beauty and with rich history and culture. I would like to convey my sincere thanks to the government of Vietnam for inviting us and for making this important gathering here in Da Nang possible. As a representative for the Norwegian government and the Ministry of Climate and Environment, I would really say that the GEF Assembly comes at a crucial time. Over the last couple of years, it has become clearer that humankind is indeed facing an extremely serious situation. I'm of course talking about planetary boundaries being overstepped. We need to realize that we actually live in the environment and depend upon it. Environment is not something exotic outside our civilization. Climate change, degradation of ecosystem services, land areas and biodiversity, marine litter, dangerous pollutants, these are only some of the global threats that we are facing today. So how can GEF help us in this situation? It brings some hope that over the years, the GEF has shown great capacity to adapt to new challenges and adjust its policies. GEF was a pioneer in developing programs where one tried to combine efforts in different sectors, creating synergies between program activities dealing with land use challenges, climate change, and biodiversity loss. This integrated approach has been further developed in the new impact programs addressing global drivers of environmental degradation. We strongly support this approach. We also feel confident that more strategic programs can truly benefit the global environment. But the GEF must also keep a solid foundation if convention priorities and country ownership. Furthermore, important ground rules for the GEF should be environmental integrity, gender perspectives, rights of indigenous peoples, and real transparency in program design and implementation. As the GEF 7 replenishment negotiations have been finalized, I think we could congratulate ourselves with a good result for environmental priorities as well as resources mobilized. And I would say that not as good maybe as it should have been, but still very good result, I would say. So we support decision for increased shares of star allocations to the least developed countries and the small island developing states. We also appreciate the high level of co-financing achieved in many GEF programs, and GEF should continue working on how to be an interesting partner for increased private sector engagement in various sectors. The actual program describing what is to be done under GEF 7 is comprehensive and well designed. In programs relating to the forests, we appreciate the strong emphasis on cooperation between related initiatives globally and regionally. Most of you would know that Norway is a strong supporter of the work against deforestation and forest degradation. I mentioned the REDD+ program, as you probably know, many of you. We encourage others who have not yet done so to participate in this global effort. Forests are important for so many reasons. Most importantly, people, including indigenous people, live there. Global climate, biodiversity depend on forests, and so do watercourses and ecosystem services that are essential for food production, access to clean drinking water, and other human needs. Marine litter threatens marine life. I talked about this a lot yesterday at the roundtable session. And when we talk about the ocean, this is vulnerable ecosystem, and it's important for human health. Furthermore, marine litter and microplastics knows no borders. So that's why Norway has contributed $35 million to ongoing international efforts to reverse the very dangerous trends we are now seeing by setting up a development aid program on marine litter, including a multi-donor trust fund window under the World Bank. We are happy that the international waters focal area got prioritized during the negotiations, and these challenges were also more firmly linked to the chemicals, waste, social area. Excellencies, friends, and colleagues, let's hope that this assembly succeeds in inspiring all of us to make the next 4-year cycle of the GEF a great success, and that the GEF-7 will be a real contributor to reversing dangerous global environmental trends and move mainstream policies firmly in the direction of real sustainable development. Thank you very much. And then I changed position to be the chair for this session this morning. And I hereby invite the next speaker, the Secretary, Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change, India, His Excellency Mr. Seiki Mishra.
Thank you, Chair. Chairperson, Excellencies, all officials of GEF, heads of delegation, representatives of international organizations here, civil society organizations, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen. On behalf of the Government of India and its 1.3 billion people, I would like to express my gratitude to the Government of Vietnam for their kind hospitality in hosting this assembly, and to the people of Da Nang for the kind of warm reception that we have all received. As a developing country participant in GEF, India has played a significant role in GEF's evolution from its pilot phase in 1991 to its emergence as an important partnership of 183 countries, international institutions, CSOs, and private sector working in the forefront of global environmental protection. India, as a donor and recipient, continues to be strongly supportive of GEF's work as a unique multilateral funding mechanism, helping developing countries to meet the objectives of the International Environment Convention and Agreement. Excellencies, India was the host of 2018 World Environment Day on the 5th of June, with plastic pollution as its main theme. Our Prime Minister, Mr. Narendra Modi, called on the world to do more to tackle plastic pollution and other environmental issues. He said that India, being the fastest growing economy in the world today, we are committed to realizing the standards of our people in a way that is sustainable and green. Also, one of the first major initiatives of the Prime Minister after coming to power was the Clean India campaign, and he has reiterated the environmental degradation hurts the poor and the vulnerable the most. It is therefore the duty of each of us to ensure that material prosperity does not compromise our environment. India is committed to follow the green path in its developmental efforts. As we come to the successful completion of GEF-6 program cycle, I congratulate the GEF CEO and the trustees of the GEF-7 replenishment. I am happy to announce that India has decided to strengthen its support to GEF-7 with a 25% increase over its contribution to GEF-6. We will now provide $15 million to GEF-7. We wish the GEF family the very best in effective implementation of the program in this cycle, with a renewed focus on demonstrable outcomes and scalable impacts. Excellencies, ultimately, it is the impact which will sustain any or all of our efforts. Given its huge challenge and the population that we have, India is also a major recipient of the financing and knowledge. We endorse the continued focus on biodiversity and land degradation. We believe Himalayan biomass deserves global attention, being of critical importance as one of the recognized biodiversity hotspots in the world. We urge GEF-7 programming to support countries of Himalayan region in achieving this. Similarly, we welcome renewed focus on land degradation in GEF-7 and commitment to meet the bond challenge to restore 150 million hectares of deforested and degraded land by 2020. Although the reduced support for climate change in GEF-7 would certainly change the complexion of this and the scale of impact of GEF program, but we do hope that appropriate action in other focal areas will generate climate co-benefits. We also welcome the thoughtful selection of the impacts and programs and hope to contribute in their great success. We hope to see the assistance to countries for improving conditions of cities, including the air quality through the Sustainable Cities program and other thematic areas. Marine pollution, Excellencies, is a serious global problem, and India has a coastline of 7,500 kilometers. India has joined the United Nations effort of Clean Seas program to monitor marine pollution. It is therefore an area of criticality for GEF to work on this. India supports the achievement of broader sound management of chemicals and waste and is committed to eliminating the most harmful chemicals which are covered by the Stockholm Convention, the Minamata Convention, and the Montreal Protocol. The GEF policy direction clearly enunciates the criticality of the national ownership of the GEF program for maximizing sustainable benefits. This is something we welcome and therefore strongly pitch for the inclusion of national agencies in the GEF partnership to build capacities in the country and improve efficiencies of GEF cycles. We need to make GEF more agile and responsive to recipients' demand and therefore look forward to additional policy measures to enhance the operational efficiency and transparency of GEF. At the end of the day, ladies and gentlemen, the best program is the one that is driven by the country. We also urge the proposed private sector advisory committee to consider primacy of government action in many of the focal areas of GEF. Private sector participation strategy should be nuanced and orchestrated. We do realize that private sector brings in a fresh perspective which is beneficial, but availability of concessional resource is limited and the overall responsibility of relating to environment lie with the public sector in developing countries. GEF, while engaging with the private sector, should ensure additionality, accountability, and country ownership. Let me again reiterate that the true critical elements to achieving our goal will continue to be technology and finance. India has achieved significant impacts through the Small Grants Project. We appreciate the potential benefits to be gained from enhancing community engagement in the GEF programs and advocate capacity building and appropriate role for the civil society organizations that have experience and commitment to the local situations. India would like to reinforce GEF support for the small grant programs in India in GEF-7. We strongly believe that GEF can deliver on all its promises and meet high expectations expressed by participants in the replenishment discussions. We commit India's support to the GEF and its very team, ably led by the CEO, Ms. Ishi. India, on its part, would continue to lead by example. Never flinch on its part to live up to its responsibility, because we strongly believe that India has to be an integral part of the global thought process. We have done well. A greater cohesive togetherness can help us do better. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen.
And thank you. Then I invite the next speaker, Deputy Minister for Multilateral Affairs in the Foreign Ministry of Venezuela, Mr. Ruben Dari Molina.
Buenos días. Quiero transmitir un saludo a su excelencia.
Good morning. I would like to thank the Minister for the Environment of Vietnam and our President, Naoki, and of course our Secretariat. I would like to extend my thanks to all the Secretariat, all the team of the GEF Secretariat. Of course, I also welcome the presence of the different international organizations who are participating in this assembly. Ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of the President of the Republic of Venezuela, Nicolás Moros, I would like to express a sincere thanks to the people and government of Vietnam for the warm hospitality that we have experienced in this beautiful city of Da Nang, the 6th General Assembly of GEF. I would also like to send a special thanks to the Secretariat of GEF for the work that they've done in the preparation of this assembly and the work that they've done in the different groups for the work, not only for the work that they've done, but the work that they will be doing. The projects that we are implementing, which shows a commitment to Mother Nature with the planet in which we live in, which must be preserved, balanced with the right balance for future generations. We would also like to recognize these elements. Mr. Chairman, despite the enormous efforts done in the environmental sphere, scientific data on the world situation of the atmosphere, the Earth, and the treatment that we're doing to both seas and oceans, despite all the efforts made, the results are not sufficiently positive. They require major commitment from all governments, all people, civil society, the private sector, all under the same umbrella and within the framework of the different agreements, conventions, which we belong to, under the principle, and it's very important to highlight this, under the principle of common responsibilities, common but differentiated responsibilities. As we all know, we do not all have the responsibility of the situation the world is going through, in particular with climate change. There are those who are more responsible than others, and that's why we underscore the principle of differentiated but common responsibilities, in particular for us, the developing countries. We have this commitment and the challenge to, by 2030, comply with the 17 Sustainable Development Goals and the 169 objectives to mitigate the damage that we've done to our ecosystems and to life on this earth. Mr. Chairman, the Republic of Bolivia supports the efforts made in different fora where we are debating these topics, and we welcome the consensus that we've reached about our planet. Venezuela, as a mega-diverse country, reiterates its commitment to the agreements made and is participating multilateral for and always underscoring the responsibility, historic responsibility of developing countries faced in front of global warming. We must promote changes in production models, consumption models that will help to minimize even more the emission of greenhouse gases. We must reduce pollution in all its dimensions, and therefore we will contribute to the conservation of life in the planet. Faced with this scenario on environmental degradation, we must still take into account and increase financial resources to create programs, actions, and initiatives that would allow our people, our states, to face up to climate change with more efficiency and more effectiveness of the situation that we face. This is the basic role of GEF and the donor countries. Greater allocation of financial resources for a better contribution and a better life in this planet. The Global Environment Fund has played a vital role and should continue playing a vital role and make more efforts so that we, the developing countries, we should have access to these funds and promote our national initiatives, sub-regional initiatives, regional initiatives that will contribute to the development of our countries in harmony with Mother Nature, in harmony with Mother Earth. We reiterate our conviction that the fund, GEF, should continue with the support of the necessary resources to achieve the objectives, sustainable development objectives. Venezuela, despite the numerous attacks it has experienced from international powers without precedent in our history, despite the unilateral measures that these have represented, violating international law, despite the pressure our country is under, a country that has numerous natural resources, but because we are defending our independence and our self-determination, despite all of these negative elements that want to impose the government of President Nicolás Maduro gives the environment extreme importance as a cross-cutting measure for our development and for the development of the other countries in the world to ensure continuity and to live in harmony with Mother Nature. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much. Next speaker, and I hereby invite Minister of Environment and Natural Resources from El Salvador, Her Excellencies Ms. Lina, Dolores, Pohl, Alfaro.
Muchísimas gracias.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Secretary, Excellencies, distinguished delegates. First of all, I would like to thank the people and government of Vietnam for their warm hospitality that we have experienced. We would also like to thank the GEF Secretariat for the marvelous organization of this assembly, which allows us to get together to discuss topics that are vital for our countries. I would like to highlight the continuous work of our President, Naoko Ishii, and we must thank her for her work together with the team of the Secretariat. We thank her for her determination in the negotiations and achievement of commitments in a world that is environmentally more complex and challenging. I would also like to thank the commitment of the donor countries who have maintained their contributions, and we would appeal to those who have not done so already to make them and to be assured that the work that the countries are doing under GEF has been necessary and has allowed us to front up to and reduce the accelerated environmental deterioration for the benefit of our planet. I would like to first of all recognize for the first 3 days of work of the 54th meeting of GEF Council to their members and alternates who've dedicated the time to debate and achieve important agreements. One of the most complex aspects of this discussion, as we all know, are the star allocations. There is no magic wand, no formula that would please all of us, but we must recognize not only the economic asymmetries of the states, but also their environmental vulnerability, the effects of climate change, and the risks associated to climate change. To use the macroeconomic indices as an element of analysis could be the easiest road to follow and most useful, but it's not always the most just or equitable. The per capita GDP does not represent a sufficient indicator to determine that a country or a group of countries could face up to the environmental challenges. My country, El Salvador, is located in the Central American region, considered, according to the last report of the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, IPCC, as the tropical region that is more vulnerable to climate change. Because we're an isthmus, we face 2 extreme weather events from both oceans, the Pacific Ocean and the Atlantic Ocean. And this increases exponentially our risks. Only one event without a name, the Hurricane 12E, represented for El Salvador a loss of 6% of its GDP. After 5 years of weather events associated with enormous rainfalls. We followed 4 days of drought. So climate change is not something that will happen in the future. It's already here, and it's affecting the productive landscapes and forest landscapes, especially in the dry corridor of Central America and the arid zones that affect the most vulnerable ecosystems in the region. The Central American region, at the same time, is one of the centers with the greatest biodiversity in the planet, being home to 7% of known species at the world level. More than 500,000 hectares of mangrove forests, the equivalent of 8% of the mangroves in the world, are found in Central America. 948 protected natural areas, or land areas and marine areas, that cover 25% of the land area of the region and 14% of the marine area. We have 1,600 square kilometers of coral reefs. It's considered as the second most important barrier reef in the world. Under the CBD, we've identified 9 marine areas of ecological and biological significance, high ecological and biological significance. This deserves a priority consideration for the conservation and restoration of our biodiversity and ecosystem services, which are extremely important for the whole world. And this is where GEF comes in a region with more than 40 million inhabitants in a small part of our territory, which is affected by migration, poverty, and violence. I firmly believe that this 7th replenishment and the policies adopted will change GEF into an essential partner to revert environmental degradation and reduce the impacts of climate change, achieving important synergies between the agendas of the 3 Rio Conventions, climate change, biodiversity, and fight against desertification, and contributing to a greater cooperation and complementarity with other initiatives, including the recently approved Agenda 2030 Sustainable Development Goals. And now we're trying to also find the synergy with the Climate Green Fund. The GEF's Technical and Scientific Advisory Panel with regards to research, these are essential tools for our work, and they contribute to improve environmental management of our territories. Its dissemination by the countries should be a priority. We congratulate ourselves for the adoption of the GEF gender mainstreaming strategy. It is not possible to ignore the contribution, the capacity, the commitment that we women give, and the fight for the environment and against climate change would not be possible if we ignore this reality. Finally, I would like to express that under the new scenario established under Agenda 2030, the participation of all sectors and social stakeholders will be indispensable, especially the participation of the private sector. Therefore, we consider that under the initiatives, Star 7 initiatives, we should promote an habilitating space that would allow greater participation and activity of the private sector, so that it will take advantage of the countless opportunities and face challenges, achieving sustainable production in our search for the achievement of our Sustainable Development Goals. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I hereby invite Minister of Environment and Energy from Costa Rica, His Excellency Mr. Manuel Rodríguez Echandi.
Muy buenos días, señor presidente.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman. First of all, I would like to present the warm greetings as well as the recognition of the government of Vietnam, who has been the host country to celebrate the 6th GEF Assembly. These 6 General Assembly is one after the first 5 ones that I participated at. And in terms of the civil society organizations with which we have worked, and I would also like to highlight and recognize the efforts undertaken as displayed by the work of the Council. And it is the interest of the government of Costa Rica to work towards the GEF 7. We also see with great satisfaction the possibility to undertake a shared dialogue with the Green Climate Fund, and without a doubt, the countries and the regions across the world, particularly the Central American region where Costa Rica is placed, has been able to provide the synergies at a scale to be able to have a positive impact in these multilateral environmental agreements. But we must be sincere and realistic at the same time. And despite the technical and financial assistance of the Green Climate Fund and of the GEF, we will need to move the necessary resources to have a positive impact in terms of our goals and aspirations, as well as in terms of our multilateral environmental commitments. And Costa Rica is a prime example of this, because we need $5 billion to be able to green our economy. And this has been an effort over the last 25 years. In our economy, we do not have net emissions of carbon emissions or deforestation. Costa Rica does not have any net gas or carbon coal emissions, since 100% of the energy produced in Costa Rica is due to renewable resources, and in particular alternative renewable resources. So the greening of our economy is particularly present within the transportation sector, and our country has been very committed towards this by providing funding in terms of extraction of hydrocarbons and oil extraction, and the cost of our greening of our economy is around $5 billion. $5 billion, which are not to come from the international aid agencies. It is $5 billion that we need to identify through a number of innovative sources where the climate change, the Green Climate Change Fund and the GEF will be able to assist. And here comes the need, coupled with this, to the need for financial assistance that many countries such as ours have to be able to be effective in the use of our resources and achieve greater efficiency. And it is this efficiency in the use of resources is strictly linked in all other areas where we must focus our attention and increase our capacity. One of them is the issue of good or better governance. I believe that one of the goals of the 2030 agenda that we have taken on, both in terms of climate change as well as other multilateral environmental concerns, require a number of firm and solid commitments. For example, respect of the law, the division of powers, private property, copyright and intellectual rights, and the like. And we, unfortunately, do not link our investments in our efforts towards sustainability of the environment in terms of the investments that need to take place for good governance. And the lack of coherence in policies do affect us, despite the number of resources that we may be able to tap into, because there is incoherence in terms of policies as how investment is to be made in terms of development, and the technical and financial investment or funding that we may be able to obtain from multilateral environmental agreements has a minimum impact. And our economy requires a greater number of resources, and it's often cheaper to destroy nature rather than to protect it, which is more expensive. And therefore, I refer to it as incoherence as far as policies are concerned. Good governability and the lack of coherent policies are two elements that we must position as top priorities within those processes of transition towards green economies, within the context of all public investment that we undertake, but equally, and if not more important, the issue of international cooperation through the Green Climate Fund and through the GEF. And I see with concern that not too many strategies are being implemented that help very little or nothing at all towards that political transition of our economies. Costa Rica is in the pursuit within this new cycle of the GEF for opportunities to continue to work towards developing initiatives with the capacity for political and economic change in order to attain those enabling conditions to reach the Sustainable Development Goals. I would like to thank once again the opportunity given to us here to be present here. Costa Rica is not here to require or to request a greater number of resources, but to commit itself towards being more efficient, more strategic in how we use our resources, under the understanding that the benefits in any progress made in multilateral environmental agreements is for our own interests, as it promotes our participation and renders us more responsible in the mobility and use of resources towards achieving greater political coherence towards a transition. Thank you once again for the opportunity you have extended to us, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Ambassador. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Next speaker will be Ambassador of Switzerland to Vietnam, Ms. Beatrice Mallor. The floor is yours.
Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, colleagues. Let me start by thanking the government and the people of Vietnam for their warm hospitality in connection with the 6th Assembly of the Global Environmental Facility held here in the city of Da Nang. Having served as the ambassador of Switzerland to Vietnam for almost 3 years, I am particularly pleased to see that my host country attaches great importance and commitment to the global environment by hosting this important international event here in central Vietnam. Mobilizing funds for the global environment is never an easy task. These days, it is particularly the case as several non-recipient countries are confronted with economic and financial challenges. It is even more of a challenge for the developing countries, which have been contributing to the GEF Trust Fund on a voluntary basis already since several years. We highly appreciate those efforts and urge other countries in a position to do so to follow suit. As you know, this replenishment is slightly lower than the GEF 6. We regret this decline, considering the continuing high needs to support the global environment. However, the replenishment is a robust one, despite considerably lower pledges by a few countries. And Switzerland is pleased to keep its contribution to a substantive level, 118.4 million Swiss francs for the GEF Trust Fund. And Switzerland will continue its support for the Least Developed Countries Fund and the Special Climate Change Fund. The replenishment is not only robust in money terms, the policy recommendations address important issues, and the programming priorities are overall well balanced. The reduction by more than 30% in the climate change focal area is regrettable but acceptable, considering that there are several multilateral funds dedicated to climate change, in particular the Green Climate Fund. However, one has to look at the value for money. In that respect, the good news is that GEF 7 is expected to bring about greater reductions of greenhouse gas emissions with less money. As part of a unique constituency of recipient and non-recipient countries, which include Azerbaijan, Kazakhstan, Kyrgyz Republic, Tajikistan, Turkmenistan, and Uzbekistan, Switzerland is honored to have been part of the GEF family since its inception in 1991. We also note that the countries of the constituency have benefited from the collaboration with the GEF and the GEF agencies and look forward to enhance this work. Two of the GEF's main strengths are that it implements projects in cooperation with the agencies, the client countries, and civil society organizations. and that it works across sectors as financial mechanisms of several environmental conventions. Environmental challenges are interrelated, and therefore, the most effective solutions are often cross-sectoral nature. This is evident in our constituency in Central Asia, where climate change, water scarcity, land degradation, and pressure on biodiversity are mutually influencing each other. The GEF was one of the first multilateral funds dedicated exclusively to the promotion of investments for global environment. Since the GEF's foundation, more funds were created. In addition, traditional bilateral and multilateral development funding institutions have increased their funding for environmental issues. This is great news, and it proves the strong relation between environmental protection and social as well as economic development. In 2005, the then UN Secretary General Kofi Annan said, "Our efforts to defeat poverty and pursue sustainable development will be in vain if environmental degradation and natural resource depletion continue unabated." 13 years later, this is still true. In its 27 years of operation, the GEF has been effective in supporting the global environment. However, successful business models need to adapt to changing circumstances. Switzerland therefore welcomes the subtle changes that GEF 7 will bring about, including greater emphasis on cross-sectoral approaches and greater flexibility and fungibility of resources within country allocation. A better strategic alignment and coordination with other sources of climate finance, including domestic sources, in-country level planning, and so on. Adapting the instruments used and the conditions applied by the GEF, reflecting the changes in economic strength of many recipient countries. And a stronger engagement with the private sector, which is expected to assume greater responsibility for environmental matters and is increasingly assuming that role. And last, a better, more meaningful tracking and monitoring of GEF activities, thereby enhancing transparency and focus on results. In concluding, Switzerland is ready to approve the documents of the 7th replenishment of the GEF. The priorities and approaches as defined in the relevant documents will support the GEF and the client countries in their efforts to address the root causes of environmental degradation. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I hereby invite next speaker, which is Minister of Natural Resources and Environment, Public Democratic Republic of Laos, Mr. Sommad.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, Excellencies, Ministers, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen. It is an honor to speak on behalf of Mr. Sommad Pholsena, Minister of the Natural Resources and Environment, Laos PDR, to address this 6th GEF Assembly meeting today. In the city of Da Nang, a beautiful and smart city, on behalf of the government of Lao People Democratic Republic, I would like to express my appreciation to the government of Vietnam and the Global Environment Facility Secretariat for your warm welcome and support to our delegation. We well recognize that since the GEF has been established in 1991, there has been some significant progress towards a more sustainable world, with the important example of progress on areas of focus, such as climate change, biodiversity, land degradation, and others. Lao PDR is rich in natural capital. For many generations, our livelihood have been entirely dependent on the forest resources, biodiversity, agricultural land, water, and ecosystem. These have contributed to more than half of our national wealth. in the last 15 years. Particularly, this has been contributing to the socio-economic development growth at the average of 70%. Taken into consideration the importance of natural capital to our livelihoods and national economic growth in the sustainable manner, the government has endorsed a Vision 2030, the Strategy 2016-2025, and the 5-year Socio-Economic Development Plan 2016-2020, in line with a green and sustainable orientation. As we know, the green and sustainable development are now at the core of our policy and decision. At the international level, we are a determined advocate of the need of safeguard our global commons, and we have ratified and implemented the past years the international convention related to environmental management, including the UN conventions on biodiversity, climate change, and desertification. At national levels, a green growth strategy in line with national socio-economic development strategy is under development. It determines the direction and overall goals to contribute to the socio-economic development by focusing on, first, raising the efficiency of the utilization of the limited human and natural resources of the country to a higher level. Second, decreasing the waste and greenhouse gas emission in urban areas that are the main cause of the climate change. Third, increasing the forest coverage to 70% by 2020 in order to raise a greenhouse gas absorption capacity. And fourth, reducing poverty and social disparity, ensuring gender roles and improving the living standard of the people to a higher level. These focus areas of our upcoming Green Growth Strategy are well aligned with the GEF program and policy direction for the GEF-7. The GEF-7 Impact Program are not only a good opportunity to embrace us in a transformation approach that enhances changes address major drivers of environmental degradation and promote effective use of resources. The GEF impact programs are also an example of approach to be repriced at the national level in order to integrate environmental considerations to be repriced at the national level in order to integrate environmental consideration into development for key priority areas that seeks to improve watershed-based livelihoods, conservation, and green infrastructure in priority landscape. The support received during GEF-6 has been comprehensive by supporting policy frameworks as an investment. In this regard, in addition to the financial support for the finalization of the NDCs, the development of Minamata initial assessment or initiate the National Adaptation Plan process. We have allocated most of our allocation to national investment priorities, sustainable forest and land management in the dry forest ecosystem in southern of Laos and Vientiane Sustainable Urban Transport Projects. We look forward to the GEF-7 playing an increasingly transformational role in addressing global environmental issues. while supporting our clean and sustainable national development. I thank you.
Thank you very much, and hereby I invite President and CEO of WWF-US, Mr. Carter Roberts.
Greetings. It is a great pleasure to be here and an honor to join all of you. My congratulations to the GEF on the replenishment, the 7th replenishment, which particularly the funding level achieved enables the GEF and all of its partners and implementing agencies to do the work to conserve the places that we hold most dear. Our world gives all kinds of signs right now as to why the GEF and its work is more important than ever. A paper recently published by Tom Lovejoy and Carlos Nobre has reached the conclusion that in the Amazon, where only 86% of the forest cover remains, if it slips below 80%, that it will forever change the ecological cycle there and hasten its transformation into a savanna. In the Arctic, the dwindling ice cover is beginning to change the ocean currents and the ecological system, which will only hasten the change of climate and all the consequent conditions in Europe and Africa and all over the world. And we have reached the point where the increased poaching of rhinos has reached the point where it is matching the reproductive rate of rhinos, which is leading us to a tipping point in the future population of that species. These tipping points and many others motivate us at WWF to work with the GEF and many other entities and certainly governments around the world to make sure that we have a real impact. From the mountains of Bhutan to the forests of the Amazon, the GEF has helped provide financing that has unlocked syndicates of financing from around the world to make a difference in places that we cherish. And we are honored to now serve as a GEF agency, helping to design and implement GEF projects around the world. Since joining the GEF family in 2013, we've been privileged to work on 12 projects, channeling some 75 million of GEF monies to projects and leveraging about 400 million from other agencies. An example just approved this week was a project that will help Bhutan and India cope with the impacts of melting glaciers in the Manas River Basin. Today, our work remains essential for many of the places and species that we love are under incredible siege. Their systems and the global economy and the livelihoods of local communities remains deeply at risk. And of course, we all know that the GEF agency occupies a unique and irreplaceable role in the world, channeling the financing from the developing world to those places in the world that most need our help. The priorities set by the GEF over the next 4 years reflect this reality. It is a combination of on-the-ground work with communities and governments in the most important places in the world, in addition to engaging all the drivers of the destruction of habitat and species, and finding a middle path that both meets the needs of humanity while keeping the planet intact that is our home. So, in conclusion, all you have to do is look at the region in which we sit, which has one of the greatest concentrations of biodiversity and natural capital that we find anywhere in the world. There is now underway a period of change that is so great that we are at risk of losing those systems upon which people depend, and in particular the design of a whole new wave of infrastructure projects that, poorly designed, will destroy the natural capital of this region, but if designed smartly, will keep it intact and help maintain what is the corresponding natural capital and the natural infrastructure alongside the built infrastructure that is required. So, on all of this, the GEF 7 strategy calls for transformation, it calls for innovation, and it calls for new partnerships. And WWF and all of our offices in 100 countries around the world are committed to work with all of you, to work with the GEF, and to bring in other entities from the private sector, from the multilateral and bilateral sectors, to make a difference in the places and with the communities and the governments that we support. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Carter. Then I invite Minister of National Development Planning from Indonesia, His Excellency Mr. Bambang P.S. Brodjonegoro. Floor is yours.
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Secretary, Excellencies, Ministers, Head of Delegation, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen. On behalf of the Government of Republic of Indonesia, I would like to express my sincere gratitude and appreciation to the government and people of Vietnam for hosting this event and the two Secretariat of GEF for the excellent organization of the 6th GEF Assembly. The 6th GEF Assembly is very timely. Our global environmental commons, the land, seas, and atmosphere we share, and the ecosystem they host, are under severe threat from ever more powerful human activities. This assembly then should be an opportunity to both look back on what we have learned and achieved in the past, and to look ahead. As it is extremely urgent to come together and transform the key economic system in the world, this assembly needs to send a strong message to the world that we need to pursue transformational change and must work together. Indonesia recognizes the continued support of the GEF for countries to meet objectives and targets of safeguarding global commons. The successful GEF-7 replenishment, where countries pledged $4.1 billion, indeed a sign of enhanced global commitment in safeguarding global commons, and also a sign of confidence in the GEF's ability to continue assist countries catalyze transformational change. This esteemed assembly is an occasion for nations as well as stakeholders to share experience, join hands, and to act to realize our shared aspiration for a resilient, sustainable, and life-affirming planet. In ensuring oceans' health, Indonesia consistently continues the efforts in protecting and conserving coral reefs, including by replanting coral reefs with high participation of communities, private sectors, and young generation. Indonesia continues to take lead in reducing marine litter, climate change mitigation, and chemicals. We also implement sustainable solid waste management by adopting circular economy and ratified Minamata Convention for further elimination and reduction of mercury use. As part of our consistent efforts on sustainable forest management, Indonesia has been implementing cross-cutting approach on expansion of community-based forest management through social forestry program of 12.7 million hectares. Furthermore, Indonesia continues to protect its essential ecosystem and has successfully managed its peatland by restoring 680,000 hectares of peatlands from our target of 2 million hectares by 2020. Thus, it will contribute to the accomplishment of our NDC to reduce 29% of carbon emission in 2030 by our own efforts, together with efforts to gradually transform energy support towards greener, renewable, and energy efficiency. Indonesia is also doing its part and will continue to contribute in achieving the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development Goals. Considering the interlinkages relationship among the goals, we are also pleased to inform you that low-carbon development, which is based on system-based planning approach, will become one of the anchor of the SDGs and become our main platform for the next medium-term National Development Plan 2020-2024. We expect that any GEF initiative in the future will be in line with our development plan. while maintaining a common but differentiated responsibility principle towards a sustainable development, strengthen international cooperation and global partnership in reducing and eliminating global threats is indeed required. Yet, my delegation views that transparency and clarity of policy and guidance on GEF-7 resource allocation and implementation are important, including policy on co-financing and investment mobilized. To conclude, Indonesia stands ready to work together in meeting the challenge and in seizing the opportunity and to address global environmental-related issues. It is in such joining together that we will define and remake our common future and restore our common home. So let us unite to make our planet the future we want. Thank you very much.
And thank you very much. Next speaker is Head of Multilateral Financing for Development and Climate, Ministry of Economy and Finance from France, Ms. Gicquel.
Monsieur le Président,
Mr. Chair, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, it is an honor for me to take the floor today. I would like, first of all, to thank warmly our Vietnamese host for organizing this 6th GEF Assembly in Da Nang. We all know, and several have said so before me, our planet is not well. This is not a debate anymore, and we met here to think about the solutions that we will bring to this problem. I would like to say that this will be a collective reflection. Solutions that we will have will meet the benefiting countries and will be supported by the instruments that we have and the expertise. The GEF is one of these instruments. It should know its added value with others to make sure that our action is pertinent and of quality. Tomorrow, we will enter our 7th campaign, and we would like to implement the ambitious work plan that we have adopted. With our replenishment, we have committed ourselves against deterioration of land and for biodiversity. A few examples. This will enable us to fight environment degradation and deforestation in the basin of the Congo, where ecosystems are being threatened. The GEF will also start a sustainable management of arid lands, especially in the Sahel. It will support the LDCs, and this is something that we salute especially. Ambitious objectives will require an exemplary GEF, and that will be very demanding. It has established partnerships and trusting relationship with the stakeholders in the preservation of environment, locally, regionally, and globally. Transparency of decisions that were made, especially for the allocation of projects, the responsibility of the GEF with all the partners, the reinforced attention for sustainability of projects and capitalization over successes and failures are the pillars on which the FEM has to make sure that efforts will bring about the realization of our objectives. We will also be counting on a commitment with the recipient countries for the funding. And we would like to underline the central place of the allocation of resources in all transparency for STAR to facilitate this commitment. As you know, France is fully engaged in the environment and fighting against the climate change. The President of the Republic said that our ODA for 2020 will be extremely significant for these challenges, and we will also receive in 2020 the World Congress in preparation of the COP15 for Biodiversity Convention, which will define the new objective for 2030. We are convinced that GEF, given their experience and the quality of the teams, will be at a central place to fight against environmental degradation, and we would like to ensure that you know that that France will be supporting you in this mission. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I hereby invite Deputy Minister of on European Integration, Minister of Ecology and Natural Resources from Ukraine, Mr. Mykola.
Thank you very much. Excellencies, ministers, head of delegations, ladies and gentlemen, colleagues, first of all, let me express gratitude to the government of Vietnam for hosting this event and the colleagues from the GEF Secretariat for excellent organization of the 6th GEF Assembly. Starting from 1994, GEF has been providing a significant support to reforming environmental sector in Ukraine. In particular, it has demonstrated new environmental principles and methodologies in the field of biodiversity conservation, climate change, combating land degradation, integrated water resource management, and effective waste management. Application of this principle became a substantial ground for development of a new national environmental policy consistent with the requirements of the key international conventions, as well as to support environmental capacity building of the country towards its sustainable development despite economical difficulties. Since 1994, the 50 projects with a total GEF funding almost $400 million have been implemented in Ukraine. This is a really significant contribution to the environmental protection of our country. However, there are even more good trends to be outlined. Following GEF recommendations and the policy, we managed to attract Ukrainian co-funding for the projects in the amount of more than $1.3 billion. It's also worth to mention that at present, the ministry puts a lot of efforts to reinforce the project's co-funding, and hopefully new projects will have Ukrainian co-funding as the ratio of 1 of grant to 7 US of co-funding. This proves our responsible approach and reinforced partnership from our side with regards to project selection and implementation. I would like also to stress that a lot can be learned from the global environmental facility by Ukrainian public authorities. I'm talking about skillful coordination and effective management of huge number of projects by a relevantly not huge administration of the GEF Secretariat, which cooperates with 183 countries in the world and implements jointly with them more than 4,500 projects. We also hope that despite the changes in the world political agenda, GEF 7 will be even more successful and efficient comparing with the GEF 6. We confirm our readiness to cooperate and contribute to this process. At present, the Ukrainian government finalized formulation of the short-term and the mid-term priorities of the country, in which environment is a very important direction of work. In particular, we have the following priorities as regards environment. On good governance, good environmental governance, and we now strongly implement strategic environmental assessment procedure and the environmental impact assessment procedure. As regards nature protection, which includes expanding of the protected areas and implemented of the so-called European Union Birds and Habitat directives. Combating with land degradation is an important problem to be solved within this priority. Sustainable use of water resources, implementation of the integrated water management, reforming of the water sector in line with the EU water directives. Effective and safe waste management, development of a comprehensive national policy and its implementation at the local level. New climate change policy, where we work to develop a low carbon emission development strategy and its implementation on the national and the local levels. And the subsoil sector reform, which means implementation of the best available technologies in the field of issuing and application of permits for extractions. Taking into account the same area of priorities both for Ukraine and the GEF, we're sure that in strong cooperation we will achieve best results in our common aim to improve the environmental protection. In that regard, we welcome the outcomes of the GEF 7 replenishment and express gratitude to the donors for their awareness on the matter of environment. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much to Ukraine. Next speaker is Minister of Nature Protection from Armenia, His Excellency Mr. Eric Grigorian. The floor is yours.
Distinguished Chair, Your Excellencies, Ministers and Delegates. It's my great pleasure and privilege to address this important gathering of GEF 6th Assembly on behalf of Government of Armenia. And I would like to express my gratitude and appreciation to the Government of the Vietnam for hosting GEF 6th Assembly. I also thank the GEF Secretariat and the trustee for their hard work during the replenishment negotiations and for bringing together the members of the GEF network this week. The Republic of Armenia highly values the opportunity to share our views with donors and member states, civil society, private sector, and other stakeholders. Armenia is a mountainous, landlocked country with a rich diversity and high rate of endemism, making the country one of the centers of plant genetic diversity. Armenia is a part of WWF's Global 200 and one of the Conservation International's World Hotspot. Taking into consideration that the environment sector problems are rooted in policies and practices applied in multiple sectors, the solutions and success can be achieved in cooperation with other sectors to find appropriate balance between environment security, economic growth, and social justice. The government of Republic of Armenia emphasizes the importance of the integration of economic and environment policies. We believe that the best economic decisions are definitely made once the environmental components are taken into consideration. Moreover, the environmental activities are more efficient when they are harmonized with economic and social factors. The environmental issues are correlated with the quality of human life, economic and social situation. It is important to admit that poverty is one of the main environmental problems, and poverty reduction can have a significant impact while solving environmental problems. In this context, we would like to call international society to take significant steps to support capacity building of the national environmental and economic decision-making institutions, assuring long-term sustainability of donor efforts. The environment policy of Armenia is based on national legislation in full compliance with obligations taken by ratified convention and international agreements. The new government program is developed with the notion of identified environment sector priorities, importance of cooperation with other sectors, and catalyzing finance toward addressing global environmental issues, increasing engagement with the private sector, as well as ensuring conditions for public participation in decision-making. We are going to enlarge the number of territory of protected areas and increase forest coverage to reach ambitious targets set by NDC of Armenia to Paris Agreement. Particularly, we have to double by 2050 the current forest cover of the country. To achieve this goal, we are trying to combine several financial and partnership instruments, including green private investment, debt for nature swap, and REDD+. One of the directions of the new government program aims to increase efficiency and effectiveness of international cooperation mechanisms, through increased country ownership on results and outcomes of projects and programs. Ladies and gentlemen, one of the successful examples of our implementation path is the world's first national SDG Innovation Lab that was opened recently in Armenia. The lab is a result of close cooperation between Government of Armenia and the United Nations. The lab will identify implementation and funding gaps, introduce prototype solutions and new models of funding, measure the impact and raise country profile and public awareness. One of the first steps taken by SDG Innovation Lab was consultation related to preventing plastic bags and initiation of national media outreach. I would like to thank the GEF once more time for its valuable role in addressing global environmental concerns that affect us all. It is important that together we continue to ensure that the GEF will be able to meet the environment and development challenges of the future, consistent with the multinational environmental agreements. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I hereby invite Director Minister for Foreign Affairs from Finland, Ms. Johanna Karanko.
Chair, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, I'm honored to address the 6th GEF Assembly on behalf of the Government of Finland. First, I would like to sincerely thank our Vietnamese host for their excellent arrangements, their warm hospitality, and the beautiful setting by the ocean. I'm pleased to visit Vietnam for the first time, the year Finland and Vietnam celebrate the 45th anniversary of diplomatic relations. For nearly as long, our two countries have engaged in cooperation in the field of environment, in the sector of water, including recently here in Da Nang, in sustainable forestry, and in climate change adaptation. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, environmental degradation and climate change are key challenges of our times. Recent scientific results show, as demonstrated yesterday by Johan Rockström from the Stockholm Resilience Center and Rosina Bierbaum from the STEP, we are spinning out of the planetary boundaries. The Earth is warming more rapidly than expected. At the same time, 2 out of 5 persons are already negatively affected by environmental degradation and the loss of biodiversity globally. These combined increase local vulnerability and may lead to migration, instability, and conflicts. The economic cost of all of this is substantial. We have to reach the Paris Agreement goals and secure the future of our planet faster. This would be also the economically smart option. Finland welcomes the GEF-7 replenishment outcome. Having one capable and efficient mechanism that focuses on major multilateral environmental agreements, enhances policy coherence, and decreases fragmentation of the local and global environmental administrations. The achievement of the environmental goals of the Agenda 2030 is another important role of the GEF. The GEF-7 outcome takes, in our view, well into account the advantages of the GEF and the role it can play. I would like to highlight 3 issues: an integrated approach, the importance of advancing gender equality, and of communicating results. The GEF's work can bring many synergies and multiple benefits in a cost-effective manner through greater integration and a systems approach. We support this holistic view to sustainable development as articulated in the 2030 Agenda. At the same time, we find it important that GEF retains expertise in the field of the environment, as this is its added value. The GEF gender mainstreaming policy was approved by the Council in 2011. The GEF project's gender performance has consequently improved. However, the overall performance study of the GEF-6 notes further advances are needed. We hope that the new policy on gender equality adopted in 2017, evolving from gender-aware to gender-responsive, will help the GEF take further positive steps. According to research, gender equality is smart economics. It improves a broad range of sustainable development outcomes. But what really counts are results. We appreciate the GEF's continued efforts to be more efficient in delivering results. The new results framework approved this week by the Council will help us to follow more closely the achievements of during GEF-7. We also need to improve communications of results to the public at large. This is crucial for raising public awareness and for enhancing taxpayer acceptance to support environmental projects. Ladies and gentlemen, as the President of Chile, Michelle Bachelet, and the CEO of Unilever pointed out yesterday, we need to work together, governments, the private sector, and the civil society. A multi-stakeholder approach is the only way to reach the ambitious goals of the Agenda 2030 and the Paris Agreement. In this regard, we welcome the decision by the Council to establish a private sector advisory group. Finally, let me assure you that Finland will continue as an active partner committed for a stronger GEF. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I hereby invite the Minister of Environment and Agriculture from Burundi, His Excellency Mr. Gicquel Ruben.
Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, while observing the protocol, we all know that protecting the environment is to make sure that all present here will survive. Indeed, food, water, air that men use and everything that we have around us are depending on it. The government of Burundi did understand this quite well when it reorganized its ministries recently, and it would be more efficient that you cannot dissociate the environment and the agriculture. That's why my department was restructured for agriculture, and we are named now the Environment Agriculture Ministry. So the vision of my government is to make sure that we will have safe food in quantity and quality for all, and we will improve the agricultural productivity in a durable and equitable manner. The promotion of a smart agriculture and a reason why in Burundi is at the heart of our concerns to preserve the environment and make sure that sustainable development would be harmonious for all in the short and longer term. To this effect, Burundi produced a report on the country environment analysis with policies and strategies that will be efficient in order to make sure that our people will have a livelihood in harmony with ecology and natural resources management. Doing nothing in preserving the environment will bring about enormous socioeconomic losses. Thus, we have to work fast and now, but all together. We all know that the resources of GEF are replenished every 4 years since 1994, and Burundi each time received funding from GEF in each phase of replenishment. The most recent one being on a regional project that is being done right now on food security, and we are within this project. We would like to reiterate here what we already said, that Burundi will benefit of the 7th phase of FEM in order to fulfill the country objectives that are considered as a commitment with the states, which will be with new approaches for the restoration of landscapes through the protection of water sources, of rivers, reforestation, the management of basins and protected areas, and reestablishment of lakes, and so on and so forth, and for all ecological functions in order to improve agricultural production and fight food insecurity. We are happy to see that the ambition of our government to preserve natural resources are perfectly correlated with objectives of this Assembly, and we are certain that GEF will support Burundi as per the past. We would like to thank the Secretariat of GEF for the excellent organization of this Assembly, and that all efforts were deployed in order to fight the environmental issues in the world and in Burundi especially. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much. Next speaker is Minister of Environment, Sanitation and Sustainable Development from Mali. His Excellency, Her Excellency, Mrs. Embu Kita Ada.
Monsieur le Président,
Mr. Chairman, ministers, ladies and gentlemen, the Minister for Environment of Mali sends its greetings to the Assembly of GEF as well as to the authorities of Vietnam for the invitation extended to us to participate in the 6th Assembly of GEF. It is a great honor and also a pleasure for me to speak on behalf of my delegation before this assembly so as to express our interest and our vision as to what is at stake in preserving the environment and to share with you our viewpoint on the relevance of activities undertaken by GEF and its donors, not only in the global context, but in the specific case of our country, that is Mali. Thanks to the impact of these impact and achievements as a financial mechanism to finance the environment, GEF has been present in Mali since 1993, and since this period, it is now occupying a specific place in the architecture of financing environmental action through financing of national regional projects and global projects through the STAR system ever since it started, and of course for the period 2015-2018. The organization civil society through the small grant program and this financing, which has certainly developed since its beginning, has covered some very important areas, that is climate change, preserving biodiversity, and combating land erosion. These projects have allowed Mali to face environmental challenges which are considered a priority. Ministers, ladies and gentlemen, in supporting the efforts of GEF in my country, I am delighted to reaffirm our commitment to protect the environment, and Mali, in signing the Paris Agreement, showed its determination to implement agreements. To do so, Mali has designed and implemented programs to reduce its greenhouse gases and to reduce its dependence on fossil fuels. Concrete actions were undertaken by the government of Mali so as to accelerate the development of the Global Development Goals. And under some accompanying measures, I would like to mention some major events that were carried out by Mali in terms of environmental action, that is inter alia, strengthening environmental governance tools through the development of some basic legislation, including the National Forestry Policy, Strategic Environmental Policy, Social Environmental Impact Studies, and Environmental Audit. We can also mention the setting up of a climate fund in Mali, as well as the organization of the second restructuration of the Green Climate Fund, that was a meeting that was held in Bamako recently. This event that was chaired by our president convened more than 300 participants, including 15 African ministers of the environment, representatives of the Green Climate Fund, national authorities, accredited authorities, and technical and financial partners, members of civil society and the private sector. It must also be noted that Mali has started the process to develop its national strategy to finance the environment. Ladies and gentlemen, At a time when we are now starting the sixth assembly, I would like to pay tribute to all the efforts made by all those who worked for 2 years to replenish the fund, and all the donors who committed themselves to this process. As a beneficiary country, I would like to stress some key points, which are actual two challenges which must be faced by GEF so as to improve its performance and better respond to our needs. The questions lead to arid areas and soil degradation, preserving biodiversity and wild fauna, amongst which I would mention elephants and puma, which is an endemic species in Africa and which is now being poached. The inclusion of women and gender in decision-making process and management of natural resources, creating synergy between GEF and other agencies so as to ensure better accreditation for further ownership and capacity strengthening, strengthening ties between GEF and Green Climate Fund to share experience on some comparable subject, the creation of action frameworks with private sector, and better ownership by the country through organized national dialogues. These matters that were raised by most of the regional constituencies and debated by the Council should enable us to reach relevant recommendations which should be used to ensure a more effective work by GEF, its partners, as well as the beneficiary countries that are faced with the same challenges, which is soil degradation, protection of our rivers and their ecosystem, pollution in general, and of course sustainable development. Ladies and gentlemen, before concluding, I would like to ask all of you to create greater ownership so as to make our institution a flexible and appropriate mechanism for multi-sectorial projects and framework programs which should enable our countries to respond to our commitments vis-à-vis international conventions, for instance, the implementation of our dues, the contribution that are determined according to national income. Some of these are subjects that should be dealt with during this meeting in the framework of a strengthened partnership, which will take into account the social and environmental issues of the sub-regional areas which we represent here. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next speaker is Chairman Parliamentary Select Committee on Environment, Science and Technology from Ghana, Mr. Manuel Karamateng Aguarco.
Mr. Chairman, Ministers of State, Excellencies, members of the Diplomatic Corps, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Emmanuel Ejakun, Member of Parliament and Chairman of the Parliamentary Select Committee on Environment, Science, Technology and Innovation. I am standing in for the Sector Minister, Professor Kwabena Frimpong Boateng, who is unavoidably absent. I bring you warm greetings from the people of Ghana in West Africa. It is indeed an honor for me to be here today as we gather together on this occasion when donor countries have confirmed their commitment to set the Global Environmental Facility GEF and its partners on a course of addressing the key drivers of global environmental degradation and achieving multiple environmental and developmental benefits. Permit me, on behalf of the government and people of Ghana, to express our profound gratitude to GEF for championing the cause of sustainable global development, as well as the small grants program, as well as the role the small grants program has played towards environmental sustenance and sustainable livelihood development to poor and vulnerable communities over the years. We acknowledge the tremendous support GEF has offered to Ghana. To date, we have received grant funding up to $381,500,000 US, applied to 79 national and regional projects. GEF 7 replenishment comes at a defining moment for the future of the planet, as environmental challenges threaten the very sustenance of mankind. Despite the efforts in the past, these challenges continue to accentuate. It is within this context the financial resources and sustainable mechanisms are required to help address these challenges that threaten our very existence. Ghana utilized its GEF 6 allocation to address key environmental challenges in a multi-sectoral way. Synergistically addressed issues of biodiversity loss, land degradation, and climate change. Key successes achieved include the adoption of a special development framework for the Northern Savannah Zone to guide future planning, rollout of 211 community participatory watershed plans, support to farmers to implement sustainable land management technologies on 7,256.2 hectares of land, reforestation of 879 hectares of land within 2 forest reserves, revise the National Biodiversity Strategy and Action Plan, which led to the development of a national biodiversity policy. In doing this, we have learned some useful lessons, such as the importance of knowledge sharing among the sectors, continuous monitoring at the local, regional, and national levels, and the need to develop community involvement to sustain the activities being implemented. Mr. Chairman, despite these modest achievements, there is still a lot of work that needs to be done to address the enormous challenges that confront Ghana and the international community at large. It is in this vein that GEF 7 replenishment and the mechanisms put in place for resource allocation must be critically examined if we are to make and sustain positive impact on the environment. As a nation, we have initiated environmental sustainability programs in the use of our natural resources through the application of science, technology, and innovation as captured in our current National Development Planning Framework, Agenda for Growth and Jobs 2018 to 2021. Ghana has signed onto the Minamata Convention and is committed to minimizing the use of mercury in artisanal small-scale mining, especially in the wake of heightened illegal gold mining activities. The government of Ghana wishes to request for an increase in its allocation of GEF 7 to continue her commitments to ensuring sustainable global environmental benefits. Suffice to say that Ghana will do this in partnership with SGP, CSOs, and the private sector. Ghana wishes to pledge her support to GEF and will stimulate the much-needed discussions and collaboration with the private sector players to establish an ecosystem-based approach to natural resource management. To conclude, I wish to thank the government and the people of Vietnam for the courtesies extended to my delegation and the excellent facilities put at our disposal in the beautiful city of Da Nang. I thank you.
Thank you very much. Next speaker is Minister for Environment, Energy and Climate Change from Seychelles, His Excellency Mr. Wallace Keith Judge Cosgrove.
Chairperson, heads of delegations, excellencies, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen. It is my pleasure to address you today as a representative of a small island developing state. Countries that may be small, but which can achieve big results. At the outset, I would like to thank the government of Vietnam for hosting the 6th GEF Assembly here in Da Nang. The people of Vietnam for their warm hospitality and the GEF Secretariat for the excellent organization and support. Mr. Chairman, nowhere is this inextricable connection between the well-being of the population, economic prosperity, and the environment clearer than on small islands. Since its inception, the GEF has been a strong partner and supporter of programs that promote sustainable development in small island developing states, such as the Republic of Seychelles. Like many small island states, Seychelles is highly dependent on the healthy functioning of both its terrestrial and marine ecosystems for its economic development and social well-being. For those of you who have not yet had the chance to visit our beautiful country, the Seychelles consists of around 115 islands with a total population of around 97,000 people and an area of 455 square kilometers. My Vietnamese colleague would appreciate that the whole of the Seychelles land area could fit into Phu Quoc Island with room to spare and the island has a larger population than the whole of Seychelles. However, the Seychelles Islands are spread across 1.3 million square kilometers of the Western Indian Ocean, and this is our exclusive economic zone. That's a large ocean to be managed by a small state with small resources. Despite a thriving tourism economy, more than 350,000 foreigners visiting a year, and our adjudged high income status, the Seychelles remains a developing country. Mr. Chairman, land is scarce, land use pressure is intense. My government has to juggle the needs of a growing population for land and housing and the demands for ever more tourism development with its commitment to the environment and biodiversity conservation. The Seychelles, like other island states, also face challenges from climate change and unsustainable use of natural resources, particularly illegal fishing. With the support of the GEF, my government and our very active civil society have together been able to make significant progress in tackling many of these issues. The fourth and fifth replenishments in particular have supported a series of projects under different thematic areas that have provided essential support to the development of planning processes, establishment of legal framework for environmental and land use planning, addressing land management issues, initiated a process for expansion of the protected area system in the main territory of the Seychelles, which has now developed into the flagship marine spatial planning exercise that has gained international attention. Exploring innovative protected area management scenarios and financing mechanisms, mainstreaming biodiversity into the tourism and fisheries sectors, which together employ half of the population, transforming our energy mix from a reliance on a fossil fuel towards a higher percentage of renewables, particularly in promoting solar energy. All of the above projects have been implemented through my ministry, which since 2008 has managed a dedicated program coordination unit to maximize the efficiency of GEF projects implementation. I would like to acknowledge the support of the UNDP as our implementing partner for these projects. Our two GF6 projects are in early stages. The first, executed by my ministry, is focused on piloting a ridge-to-reef approach that addresses whole island priorities for improved management and conservation of upland forests and agricultural ecosystem, as well as coastal and marine ecosystems. In effect, bringing together many of the initiatives supported in the GEF4 and GEF5 into a unified framework. The second, executed by the Blue Economy Department, which falls under our Vice President's office, follows on from two previous regional projects in focusing on the development of sustainable fisheries but also supports the execution of our marine spatial planning process and piloting of a blue economy mechanism. This project is particularly important in realization of the blue economy ambitions. As we move now into GEF-7, I want to congratulate GEF, firstly, for successfully concluding the replenishment of funds, and I express my continued appreciation for the support of GEF that GEF provides to us. The Seychelles is one of the largest recipients of GEF funding per capita in the world. I believe we have made excellent use of the support provided thus far. Our hope is that GEF support will continue, and my government will ensure that the funds allocated will be put to excellent use. Mr. Chairman, I am proud to say that GEF support has motivated my country to commit to protecting 50% of its land area and 30% of its oceans territory, using funding leverage through innovative mechanisms such as the landmark debt for adaptation swap that was signed in 2015, blue bond, and the blue bonds and the private sector support. The country has set itself a further target of achieving 30% renewable energy by 2030 and 100% renewable energy before the UNFCCC target of 2050, and has established an energy policy that focuses on energy efficiency and upscaling of the solar energy program that was initiated through GEF-supported climate change mitigation projects. All of this has contributed to developing a holistic blue economy approach, placing ocean governance in the forefront of sustainable development and coupling this with a drive to win climate finance for the renewable energy agenda. A dual approach that I believe is setting a global example of how a small state can think really big. In closing, Mr. Chairman, we would like the GF to continue to take SID's unique circumstances into account and address them in a manner that is transparent, inclusive, and accountable. It is important that the GF looks at SIDS particularly in terms of its vulnerability, and this is considered whenever decisions are being taken. It is indeed clear that the GF has been an important partner in environmental management, providing assistance to facilitate the delivery of several multilateral environmental agreements. Therefore, we again wish to encourage the Assembly to adopt the same approach to allocating resources to SIDS alike, and look forward to continuing partnership in GEF-7. I thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much. Next speaker is Director for Environment and Economic Development, Minister of Foreign Affairs and Trade from New Zealand, Ms. Karen Murray. And I must repeat for the speakers that we have 5 minutes for each speak, and if we should be finished until lunch, we need to keep that 5 minutes period. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Excellencies, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of the Government of New Zealand, I'm pleased to have the opportunity to address the 6th Assembly of the Global Environment Facility. I would like to take this opportunity to extend our appreciation to the Government of Vietnam for hosting this important occasion and for their, outstanding hospitality this week. I also thank the GEF Secretariat and the trustee for their hard work during the replenishment negotiations and for bringing together the members of the GEF network today. New Zealand is committed to domestic and global action to enhance environmental protection. We are well aware of the cost of inaction. Our natural resources are a major source of our economic prosperity and our international competitiveness. The environment is an integral part of our national identity and culture. We work, live, and play on the land, in the sea, and even occasionally in the air. Our ability to do this is one of the most cherished parts of being a Kiwi, and one of the main reasons so many people travel so far to visit our country. Like every country, New Zealand has areas where development has placed unsustainable pressure on natural resources. And like others, we seek solutions that sustain economic progress within environmental limits. For example, our Environment Minister's #1 priority is to improve the quality of our fresh water. Our new government has set an ambitious target for New Zealand to become a net zero emissions economy by 2050. In April, we became one of the first countries to ban new permits for offshore oil and gas exploration. And this month, we banned plastic microbeads. But we're also part of an interconnected global community, a community which is dependent on the sustainable management of natural capital for poverty eradication and for prosperity. As a supporter of global action to enhance environmental protection, we are party to almost all major multilateral environmental agreements and to numerous other international environmental partnerships. We attach considerable importance to the obligations and commitments that they generate. The GEF plays a crucial role in this space. It helps turn obligations and commitments into action. It can help deliver transformational change, including in areas and issues where local resources are desperately thin. New Zealand is a long-term supporter of the GEF as an efficient and effective multilateral institution. We value the assistance it provides to those that are disproportionately affected by environmental degradation, due in part to their dependence on natural resources for their livelihoods and economic development. In particular, we acknowledge the unique vulnerabilities of least developed countries and small island developing states. We welcome the GEF's considerable efforts to increase the support it provides to these countries, which illustrates the GEF's responsiveness to the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. The GEF support is particularly relevant for communities in the part of the world in which New Zealand is situated. Promoting biodiversity, sustainable fisheries and water use, management of chemical waste, and the protection of coastal and forestry resources are important for the Asia-Pacific region. The 6th overall performance review of the GEF points to impressive results for environmental protection, which in turn impacts the sustainable economic growth that underpins living standards. New Zealand is committed to investing in its partnership with the GEF during GEF 7 to encourage further progress and more sustainable environmental outcomes. As a member country from the Asia-Pacific, we were pleased that we could significantly increase our contribution to the GEF in the 7th replenishment. We associate ourselves with GEF 7's focus on addressing the drivers of environmental degradation, gender equality, and stronger collaboration with the private sector. We welcome the programming direction for GEF 7, which doubles the target for the mitigation of greenhouse gas emissions and increases the targets for biodiversity protection. These goals must be delivered in a way that leaves no one behind. New Zealand will continue to support the GEF's engagement in countries with unique vulnerabilities, including least developed countries and small island developing states. We will support systemic change through activities that mainstream the environment in national laws, regulations, and policies. We will continue to seek better coordination between the GEF and the GCF, encouraging the two financial mechanisms to play to their respective but complementary strengths. The GEF's Capacity Building Initiative for Transparency plays an important role in helping developing countries report under the Paris Agreement's Enhanced Transparency Framework. We will support activities that help unlock private finance for the environment. Environmental issues require funding well beyond what can be provided through public financing alone. They also depend profoundly on improvements in the sustainability of private production and consumption patterns as sought by SDG 12. Mr. Chairman, New Zealand will also engage constructively with other members of the GEF network during GEF 7 to help make sure the GEF is using resources as efficiently and effectively as possible. We congratulate all members on a successful GEF replenishment. Thank you.
Thank you.
Merci.
Member, Head of Division on Climate Finance from Germany, Ms. Mallor.
Mr. Chairman, Excellencies, distinguished heads of delegations, council members, and GEF partners, ladies and gentlemen. Let me start by thanking the government and the people of Vietnam for their hospitality and commitment to the global environment demonstrated by hosting this 6th GEF Assembly here in the beautiful city of Da Nang. The 7th replenishment of the Global Environment Facility comes at an important point of time. Never before, global ecosystems, international waters, and regional biodiversity have experienced equal pressure as they do today, including from global warming. The GEF plays a central role in advancing the necessary transformational change and in the implementation of multilateral environmental agreements. The GEF has a strong track record in delivering overall good project performance for meeting these challenges. Yet, and in order to ensure contained high performance quality, appropriate financial resources are required. Hence, providing adequate and sufficient financial means to the GEF is essential for its operation, effectiveness, and efficiency. The outcome of the 7th replenishment of the GEF demonstrates continued strong commitments to global environment issues such as climate, biodiversity, and marine conservation. It underlines the importance of the GEF's work and role in the international environmental financing architecture. We can be proud of replenishment pledges amounting to $4.1 billion. This has been achieved through significant increases in national currencies in the contributions of most of the contributing parties. Germany has increased its pledge from GEF-6 by 20%, contributing 420 million euros in total. But the success of GEF-7 cannot only be measured in monetary terms. We also believe we have developed the right framework for GEF-7 that reflects current environmental challenges and countries' needs. Given the unique role of the GEF in the international environmental financial architecture, the GEF-7 climate change focal area strategy is specifically designed to complement programming by the Green Climate Fund and other climate funds. Germany supports the GEF-7 focus on mainstreaming climate aspects in other focal areas, which will result in an overall increase of climate-related investments to at least 60% of GEF overall funding. The replenishment process has also demonstrated that we need to become better and clearer in telling the GEF story as an innovator and driver for environmental action. This includes continued proof of effective allocation of limited resources. In order to scale up environmental protection measures, the mobilization of co-financing becomes even more important. In this regard, the GEF can play a catalytic role in unlocking private finance for the environment and for climate protection. Despite all our achievements, for the coming years, challenges remain and need continued attention by the whole GEF family. We see room to make progress in piloting and demonstrating technologies and financial approaches that could be scaled up by other actors. Promoting transformational change through adoption of systems approaches and addressing drivers of environmental degradation. Promoting gender equality. Expanding the number and variety of donors to GEF. Enhancing engagement with the private sector, also beyond financial terms. And strengthening operational governance with clear criteria for program selection and design, as well as for selection of agencies by country governments. We call for continuous engagement of the GEF and commit Germany's support, not only in financial terms, to the GEF family. Thank you for your attention.
And thank you. Next speaker is Executive Director, CEO and GEF Operational Function Point, Mr. Nathaniel T. Blama from Liberia.
Excellencies, Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, I bring you greetings for His Excellency Ambassador George Manuel, President of the Republic of Liberia, and the people of Liberia. On behalf of my delegation, I want to extend a thanks and appreciation to the government and people of Vietnam for the warm welcome we received since we arrived here. Liberia, as you may know, is endowed with vast, numerous natural resources, which includes diamond, gold, timber, cocoa, rubber, and others. Liberia has the largest portion of the Upper Guineas forest in West Africa that serve as habitat for endemic animals and plant species. Liberia is a biodiversity hotspot. Mr. Chairman, in the quest to use the endowed natural resources for economic development, the government and people of Liberia has and continue to use these resources even before the birth of Liberia. The harvesting of these resources, coupled with other computing human activities, are generating many environmental problems, such as biodiversity loss, pollution of our waters, our water bodies, coastal erosion, destruction of mangroves and wetlands. These environmental problems are contributing to the destruction of the environment, thereby undermining national development. In addressing these problems, the government, as part of the Committee of Nations, signed and rectified or acceded to many environmental instruments to ensure the protection of the environment. Over the years, through national and international support, we have worked assiduously to develop policies, programs, regulations, guidelines, and standards, and plans to ensure the protection of the environment. Mr. Chair, Liberia was allocated $7.3 million United States dollars for biodiversity, climate change, and sustainable land management under GEF-6 replenishment period. To access this amount, Liberia worked with relevant implementing partners. To access this amount, Liberia worked with relevant implementing partners through different project portfolios. Liberia envisions that these projects, when finally executed, will be able to reverse some of these negative impact on the environment. Mr. Chairman, ladies and gentlemen, Liberia is at the moment developing a new national development plan, the Proposed Agenda for Prosperity and Development, that intends to improve the quality of living for the vast majority of its citizens and in an equitable manner. In doing so, environment and climate change issues are going to be the frontier of the new development agenda. This will ensure of the greening and climate-proofing the development agenda for the country, thereby ensuring sustainable development. This will ensure the progress of many of my country in achieving the attainment of the Sustainable Development Goals at the national level. Mr. Chairman, any environmental institution, including Liberia, the EPA of Liberia, will need adequate and sustainable technical and financial support to address numerous environmental problems and action plans. In light of this, may I take this time to thank the donor countries that have contributed financially over the years and for the new GEF 7 replenishment period. In the coming months, Liberia will undertake a national dialogue to discuss various environmental issues confronting my country. The outcome of this dialogue will lead into the development of an integrated project that will have significant impact at the country level. In this light, Liberia calls for increment in the cap of country. Liberia calls for increment in the cap for countries to access the least developed countries' funds to address especially the vulnerable and the flood and coastal communities of Liberia. Additionally, increased support for the small grant program cannot be overly emphasized. Mr. Chairman, Liberia is of the strong conviction that GEF will again demonstrate a leadership role in the new replenishment period to ensure timely disbursement of funds to countries like mine to protect the environment in a sustainable way. Mr. Chairman, finally, on behalf of the government and people of Liberia, I want to extend my delegation heartfelt appreciation to the Secretariat of the Global Environment Facility for excellent organization of work done to have this 6th ministerial section of GEF. I thank you.
Thank you. I then give the floor to Secretary of State, Secretary of Environment and Natural Resources from Honduras, His Excellency Mr. Jose Antonio Galamas. And I remind you that you have to stick to the 5 minutes period of your speech.
Buenos días.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, distinguished excellencies, delegates. Ladies and gentlemen, first of all, allow me to thank the government and the people of the Socialist Republic of Vietnam for this warm welcome. It is indeed a real privilege to be here in this beautiful country. Secondly, I would like to thank the Executive Council and the technical teams and Secretariat of GEF. On behalf of the President of Honduras, Mr. Salvador, and would equally like to congratulate to each and every one involved in the organization of this significant event, and I would like to hereby recognize their leadership in their work. Ladies and gentlemen, I know that since our last meeting of the 5th GEF Assembly, our way of thinking and of acting has changed. We have seen the Climate Change Agreement of Paris and others that have taken place, which lead us to believe and to think and feel that we need to have faith, and indeed we have faith in the international community, and that we're along the right path towards sustainable development. For this particular reason, at this 6th GEF Assembly, in terms of the GEF 7 and the replenishment process, we need to stay on that course. A course that the gender focus needs to be beyond a simple mere document. It has to be a permanent feature in all our work. Roadmap for businessmen not to see the environment as a problem, but equally as an opportunity, where the academic sector can be one of the pillars in which global actions are focused. A roadmap in which local communities and indigenous populations do not only just require protection, but recognition and respect. I would take a long time to talk about the achievements of the GEF, but please allow me to mention briefly some of the impact in our country, to share with you how Honduras has had a number of positive experiences. For example, through the Small Grants Program, we have formed and seen a change in the lives of so many people that were previously negatively affected. Otherwise, this would not have been possible if we had not seen the successful experiences in them, in their lives. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, the Small Grants Program has marked the lives of many people in our country. And Honduras joins and requestfully requests for the ceiling in the SGP not to be decreased. Also, allow me to say that the cattle and the agriculture in our country had been depressed in the past, and now with this new funding, we have been able to undertake a number of pilot projects. These projects have enabled us to demonstrate that it is indeed possible to achieve sustainable development through cattle production in respect of biodiversity. Now, too, artisanal fisheries are more robust, better organized, and the lives of and livelihoods of all these families are different, because through good practices we can talk about sustainable fisheries. Ladies and gentlemen, I know that not all of them are successful stories. Many of them are challenges, not only in the handling and management of the funding, but equally in terms of transparency, in terms of enabling opportunities, but also to be able to guarantee the promotion of capacity building, and for this to be done on a local basis. These are all challenges, and only through this way we'll be able to achieve a new paradigm that will enable us to stay on the course towards sustainable development. And we need to identify greater efficiencies in the resource management of allocations and funding of GEF. We are all responsible for climate change, therefore we'd like to join the call for action by other countries present here today, requesting for the funding earmarked for our countries not to be decreased. We know that the approach by the GEF towards the transformation for more sustainability, not only in terms of the conservation of biodiversity, but for them to be able to retrieve goods and services that are necessary for sustainable development, and that will enable us to have opportunities of development as well as a green policy that is so urgently required. These are opportunities that we are to undertake, as we did in GEF-6, in areas of production through a public-private sector partnership with a positive impact in the country in areas such as coffee and cocoa production, for them to be considered in the international markets. But now, with the added advantage of being ecologically sustainable with a low digital footprint. Ladies and gentlemen, a message that we need to bear in mind is that sustainable development in terms of Agenda 2030 will be possible when fair trade will be ecological trade, when we will instill good practices in our future generations for sustainable development. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, given all my previous comments, Honduras is working hard towards achieving this in the long term through the adoption of a green agenda, through a process that takes the diversity and the plurality of all our peoples, including indigenous population, on a cross-cutting manner. Thank you once again for the support given to the people and government of Honduras, and we reiterate our commitment to complying with all the actions undertaken at a country level, which we will comply with at an international level. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Next speaker, Director, Department of Environment and Natural Resources from Philippines, Ms. Wagan.
Okay. Your Excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, in behalf of the government of the Philippines, I would like to thank the government of Vietnam and its people for hosting and organizing this GEF Assembly meeting, and for their hospitality and cordiality provided to us or given to us. We would like also to thank the GEF Secretariat for working hard and bringing us here together for this very important event. Since its humble beginnings, the GEF has become one of the major driving forces in supporting developing countries to achieve agreed global environmental benefits embodied in various international environmental agreements. For the Philippines, a total of 113 GEF projects across the different focal areas have been approved since the pilot phase up until GEF 6, wherein 56 of which are national projects with a total grant funds of 253.06 million and a 3 billion leverage co-financing. The country has also participated in 57. The implementation of these projects have significantly contributed not just in the conservation and protection of the environment, but also in empowering and improving the lives of Filipinos as effective medium in sharing valuable knowledge and experiences through awareness raising, hands-on training, and interactive seminars and workshops. Also, through these projects, numerous sustainable livelihoods like the establishment of relevant micro-biodiversity enterprises have been supported and provided, which allowed for better appreciation of the project's importance and benefits. The GEF had also made significant support to the country in formulating, reviewing, and drafting environmental policies and plans such as the Indigenous Peoples and Community Conserved Areas, or ICCA Bill, an amendment to the Integrated Protected Areas Fund, and to the Chemical Control Order for mercury and mercury compounds. Policy framework on access and benefit sharing from using genetic resources, and the passage of the Renewable Energy Act, mainstreaming biodiversity conservation in local development planning processes, and protocols for in situ conservation of crops on farms, on climate information sharing, and on geographic insurance units of development. Moreover, GEF support also paved the way for the development and/or further implementation of the various MEA strategic actions plans, such as the Philippine Biodiversity Strategy and Action Plan, National Climate Action Plan, National Action Plan to combat desertification, land degradation, and drought, and National Implementations Plan for the Stockholm Convention on Persistent Organic Pollutants. The other SAP developed through GEF-funded projects are the National Invasive Species Strategy and Action Plan, the Sustainable Development Strategy for Seas of East Asia, and the Strategic Action Program for the South China Sea. Considering the GEF's aim of advancing the GEF 2020 vision and in seeking maximum impact across the focal areas through integrated programming, the Philippines is ready to take specific actions to achieve this goal, particularly in developing bigger projects with higher impacts, exploring enhanced synergies, and effective integration across GEF focal areas. In line with this, the country, in its GEF 6 portfolio development, has taken a step forward in embarking on a multifocal national impact program by developing two sister projects, both focusing on biodiversity and land degradation, entitled Integrated Approach and the Management of Major Diversity Corridors in the Philippines. And the second one is in enhancing biodiversity, maintaining ecosystem flows, enhancing carbon stocks through sustainable land management, and the restoration of degraded forest lands. The convergence of these projects is hoped to just be the start of a more integrated approach of project development. These two projects have been approved and also enable the country to access the SFM incentives. The country also envisioned to continue under GEF-7 the implementation of a Small Grants Program, or SGP, in the Philippines. The SGP, currently under the GEF-5, has proven to be an effective platform in the country for strengthening civil society participation in advancing our biodiversity agenda, thus stepping up capacities for achieving biodiversity goals in accordance with the national plans and international commitments, as well as building wider constituency at the local level. The SG5 in the country had already provided grants to 54 grantees with a total committed funds amounting to approximately $27 million. Given the crucial role of the civil society organizations, or CSO, in achieving the GEF's mission of safeguarding the global environment, particularly in governance and policy advocacy, awareness and outreach on global environmental issues, the Philippines has already undertaken certain initiatives to strengthen and broaden CSO participation in the GEF. Through various consultations with the civil society organizations from all over the country, a roadmap was initially developed for the establishment of a GEF CSO network in the country. We are pleased to share also that the development of the Philippines National Portfolio Formulation Document for GEF-7 is now in works through some support provided by some of our partners like UNDP. Initial multi-stakeholder consultation meetings had already been conducted to inform the document and will also target to hold a trainer's training on PIF development that will enhance the government's capacity in GEF proposal writing while promoting internal skills development so as not to depend solely on external support from hard consultants and experts. Additionally, through the assistance of the United Nations Industrial Development Organizations, or UNIDO, the Philippines is also currently developing its framework towards a sustainable chemicals and hazardous waste management by 2030. This framework, with emphasis on industrial chemicals, will help in identifying focus or priority areas for future GEF projects, starting this GEF-7 through the 4 identified prioritization criteria, which are legal, economic, stability, and social. This will allow to effectively develop chemicals and waste projects that are in harmony to national plans and priorities. For over 26 years, GEF has become an invaluable partner institution for the Philippines and assisting the country not only in meeting its MEA commitments, but also in the growth of the nation and its people. Let me take this opportunity to state that the Philippines is truly privileged to be part of this inspiring partnership, and rest assured that our continued and active involvement in all future GEF endeavors. Thank you very much for your attention. Good morning.
And thank you. Next speaker is Minister of Environment and Spatial Planning, Kosovo, Ms. Albena Resijan.
Dear Minister of Natural and Resources and Environmental from Vietnam, Mr. Hong Ha, dear GEF CEO Mrs. Ishii, dear Chairman and GEF Secretary, dear Presidents, Ministers and Head of Delegations, representatives of diplomatic missions, dear participants from different parts of the world, ladies and gentlemen. Allow me to initially express my country's and my personal gratitude to the country of Vietnam, the host of this meeting, which has involved Kosovo in the 6th GEF Assembly and has given us the opportunity of being hand in hand and equal to the other participating countries. And please let me thank for your making me feel so welcome. We share common values and at the same time common opportunities. We also appreciate highly the invitation of the Global Environment Facility Secretariat for allowing Kosovo to participate in the Assembly, since, as you all might be aware, my country is not yet a member of the United Nations organization, and that it is neither a signatory nor a party to any of the UN conventions, especially in environmental sector. The involvement of Kosovo in this assembly rounds up our work in helping us improving the state of the environment, our common concern, and at the same time engages us in the framework of initiating the European integration process in undertaking concrete steps in meeting the standards. Jointly, we may show how much we can achieve in preserving and improving the environment. The world is our commonwealth, and only together we can make it better and richer. I wish to share with you some of the commitments that my country is making in the field of the environment. Kosovo is a small country in Southeast Europe with a bitter legacy of the war, which has left consequences not only to its people, but also to its environment. For years, we have been committed to creating a good legal and program framework harmonized with the European Union legislation and international norms and standards. A particular importance has been given in improving waste management, water management, biodiversity conservation, air protection from pollution, climate change adaptation, mitigation, and climate change impacts, and the implementation of clean and eco-innovative technologies. We have achieved good results by changing our environment and by preserving our natural assets that have been damaged by the difficult past. We have difficulties and challenges in the implementation of environmental policy standards, but we have not stopped. In this important battle for the environment, the land, and our resources in general, we need support. We had the European Union on this journey with us, in which we expect to become a natural part in the near future through various instruments and programs. Although for a huge and important work, we also need support from programs and instruments of the United Nations funds. The Global Environment Facility is one of these programs from which we expect support in implementing projects. I would like to emphasize here that GEF, in different and indirect ways, has included Kosovo in various projects, such as the project enabling transboundary cooperation and integrated resources management in the extending Green River Basin, which is being implemented through the Global Water Partnership Mediterranean, involving Macedonia, Albania, Montenegro, and Kosovo. Regardless of the beliefs of any of you on my country's independence, which has been recognized by 116 UN member states, a larger number of international organizations, and important world institutions, each of your support and the support of the United Nations is necessary for our country to achieve the common goal for a better and more advanced world. The environment of Kosovo is part of this world. I take the opportunity once again to present the request of Kosovo in having access to GEF's funds and programs and to be a participant in all activities that are organized within GEF. Simultaneously, to benefit from this program through the implementation of concrete projects. Make us an inseparable and equal part of the common world. We also see a good opportunity in cooperating with the regional countries for the realization of joint projects and programs through the GEF support in exchange of experiences and practices. Allow me to express my gratitude once again for the opportunity of the participation of Kosovo in this assembly and for dealing with such serious issues of ours. Nature does not need people. People need nature. Therefore, let us all come together, work together for a cleaner environment, a healthier life for us, for our children, and the next generations to come. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Next speaker, Permanent Secretary for Environment, Water and Climate, Ambassador from Zimbabwe, Ms. Grace Tsitsi Mutanduru.
Mr. Chairman, distinguished delegates, allow me at the outset to express gratitude to the government of the Socialist Republic of Vietnam for the warm and familiar hospitality extended to my delegation since our arrival. I also wish to express our appreciation to the GEF Secretariat for the successful hosting of this important conference. We are indeed delighted to be part of the 6th Assembly of the Global Environmental Facility in this beautiful city of Da Nang. The GEF Assembly is convening at a time of increased threats to the global environment and our well-being. We have now witnessed a proliferation of environmental challenges such as pollution, deforestation, land degradation, poaching, against the background of a changing climate that impacts lives of communities who bear the brunt of increased negative environmental changes. Environmental issues, therefore, should no longer be about endless negotiations, but concrete action that requires broad approaches in addressing the drivers of environmental change. In addressing these challenges, the focus on results and provision of predictable, adequate, and timely means of implementation is critical, and the GEF has a central role to play. Zimbabwe is therefore appreciative of the work done so far by the GEF in availing financial resources to achieve environmental benefits. The 6th overall performance study by the GEF Independent Evaluation Office informs us that the GEF has continued to demonstrate its transformational impact. Indeed, the GEF has a comparative advantage in terms of its broad coverage of environmental issues, having more than 25 years of experience in global environmental financing and with results to show for it. Zimbabwe welcomes the outcome of the 6th overall performance study, OPS6, by the GEF Independent Evaluation Office that has shown an improvement in the performance rating for Southern Africa compared to the regional average. This is indeed an indication of our commitment to contribute significantly to global environmental benefits. We hope that in future, such performance ratings can be used as a significant determinant for resource allocations over and above the traditional indices. For Zimbabwe, the GEF has been and still is the largest partner for environmental management. We have implemented 42 projects since joining the GEF in 1994. We have received about $158 million and attracted about $1.2 billion of core financing to date. Funding from the GEF is addressing many institutional gaps in the management of key ecosystems to achieve environmental benefits. This is critical as Zimbabwe is home to key ecosystems of international significance such as biosphere reserves, national parks, World Heritage Sites, Ramsar sites, and key bird areas. Management of such complex ecosystems requires huge financial resources and planning. The successful conclusion of the GEF-7 replenishment negotiations has provided impetus to our efforts to achieve environmental benefits. We appreciate that some of our concerns as recipient countries were taken on board during the replenishment process. We appreciate that allocation of scarce resources is a difficult balancing act. We are therefore pleased that some key working elements from previous cycles, such as the STAR framework, country support program, and the small grants program have been maintained. For Zimbabwe, the small grants program, the country support program, and STAR frameworks represent the key strengths and comparative advantages of the GEF, as they collectively enhance country ownership, predictability, and results. However, their implementation should be continuously reviewed and assessed to enhance transparency, flexibility, and ease of access. They should also be reviewed to ensure compliance with convention, guidance, and national priorities. It is, however, our plea that the GEF-7 country allocations should not go below the GEF-6 allocations, given that momentum has already been built through our current GEF country portfolios. Any attempt to reduce and negatively readjust allocations will therefore dampen national efforts towards the desired global environmental benefits. Whilst we welcome the continuation of key policies, as already outlined, we are, however, still not clear about the future of the grant-based approach, as we are witnessing a subtle and gradual shift to other non-grant instruments. We are noticing continued attempts to impose additional requirements on recipient countries to access GEF financing. While certain arrangements such as investment mobilized and optimization are important aspects of grant financing, we are concerned that they will soon be used to disadvantage some recipient countries. These extra burdens and the continued decline in pledges will dampen the desire to achieve global environmental benefits. Zimbabwe therefore requests the GEF Assembly to reaffirm the Rio Declaration principles, which are also enshrined in all conventions to which the GEF serves as a financial mechanism. While we appreciate the need to be innovative and show ambition to achieve transformational change, however, the desire for transformational change should not make us lose sight of our mission and negatively affect that which is working. Environmental conservation is an expensive undertaking which requires a collaborative effort. As such, to achieve transformational change, the GEF needs to foster strategic partnerships with other financiers, including the private sector. A broader, clear, and deeper engagement of the private sector is therefore a prerequisite for the success of the GEF. We should, however, be cautious that the GEF's engagement with private sector should not affect the grant approach and country allocations. GEF private sector engagement should not mean GEF's gradual and subtle shift away from grants. The GEF should therefore remain a financial mechanism for the conventions and should be guided in its operations by convention resolutions. Ladies and gentlemen, global benefits will not be achieved without building the capacity of recipient countries, and therefore the country support program is a strategic area which the GEF should prioritize. Currently, capacity and monopoly on program design, implementation, and evaluation is resident with implementing agencies. We need capacity and support to be able to absorb the funding and cumulatively produce the required global environmental benefits. The Assembly should ensure that the GEF prioritizes capacity building for recipient countries to ensure country ownership. Zimbabwe commits itself to ensuring the achievement of global environmental benefits. We will endeavor to avoid irreversible environmental damage, maintain essential environmental processes, and preserve the broad spectrum of biological diversity for current and for future generations. In this regard, we are proud to associate with the global movement towards this worthy agenda. Esteemed delegates, Zimbabwe is appreciative of GEF Secretariat, donor countries, and GEF implementing agencies' continued support and commitment to environmental sustainability, especially in developing countries such as Zimbabwe. Given the magnitude of the global challenges, a lot more support and resources are required to effectively mitigate these challenges. I thank you.
Thank you. I must remind you that according to the time schedule, we have no chance to come to the bottom of the list because we have extended the time very much. So next speaker is Colombia Head of Office for International Relations, Minister of Environment and Sustainable Development, Ms. Angelica Mayolo.
Buenos días a todos. En nombre del gobierno.
Good morning. On behalf of Colombia, we'd like to thank the hospitality of the government of Vietnam and the excellent organization of the Sixth Assembly by the GEF Secretariat. In Colombia, we understand that economic growth and sustainability go hand in hand. And that is the roadmap that should lead us to progress in the context within the new country we're building after reaching a peace accord. Over the last few years, we have made substantial progress in the protection of our natural resources. Aware of the commitment of GEF, the country, the most diverse country in biodiversity per square kilometer, it's the sixth with the greatest biodiversity richness in the world. And all of this represents an enormous responsibility and enormous challenges for Colombia. To make progress in our sustainable development, GEF has been a strategic partner and mechanism to comply with the environmental goals, both nationally and international level. With the conservation of our natural capital, we've increased more than 31 million hectares, they are protected areas. We've implemented other conservation strategies, like the protection of forests in our country, in the Ramsar Convention, and 7 million hectares of forest reserves in the Amazon region. More than 42 million hectares of preserved areas. With the support of GEF, we have joint efforts to accomplish one of the most greatest protected areas in the country, in the world, the Natural Park Gicquel. The challenges with regards to conservation and sustainable use of the natural capital of the country must continue. And it is for this reason that we have started initiatives like Colombia's Heritage, which establish a new financing order for the long term. with both public and public partnerships for the conservation of 20 million hectares, with management of protected areas and efficient management and other protected areas together with landscapes in compliance with the CBD, the objectives, the Sustainable Development Objectives and other international commitments. We made the decisions to create financial instruments to guarantee the necessary resources for these areas. Tax on carbon, which allows us to develop projects for environmental services with rural communities that protect strategic environments. In the fight against deforestation, a global challenge that we all have, in 1917, almost 35% reduction in deforestation. We created a strategy of controlling deforestation and forest management, an intersectorial commission at the highest level of government to implement the strategy, and also agreements to work with indigenous communities and rural communities towards this goal, including monitoring of our forests. We also increased the restoration of degraded ecosystems. More than 600,000 hectares were restored under the scheme. In addition, we have management systems, biodiversity management systems like payment for environmental services and the no loss of biodiversity objective, so as to strengthen environmental authorities, social development, social and economical development for all communities. It's important to point out the results to date of the program Give Back to the Planet for the rational use of plastic bags and a payment for the consumption of these plastic bags. There has been a reduction in the country of 35% at the point of payment, and between July 2017, July and December, more than 98 million plastic bags will not be sold in the stores in our country. More and more, we Colombians are being aware of this fact and are contributing to the conservation of the planet. We strengthen the capacities of environmental institutions through the dialogue with all sectors, promoting the policy of transparency and access to information, the participation, innovation and cooperation in the public management of these areas. Through the different GEF programs, and in particular the Small Grants Program and the Sustainable Amazon Landscapes, we've strengthened and valued our communities, our ethnic communities, indigenous and Afro-Colombian, because they are the true guardians of our natural resources. And in Colombia, more than 50% of our forests are within the collective territories of these communities. At the international level, we have also contributed enormously to the international debates and regional debates. Design, definition, and the adoption of the Sustainable Development Goals. We participated actively in the negotiations on these goals, and after several years of work, we've turned into reality the Paris Agreement. We've made progress in the ratification of the Minamata Convention on Mercury. All of these measures should be a permanent effort and should be maintained, so in the medium and long term we can see materialize that dream of a country in peace with our co-workers and strengthening our national heritage. All of this we can reach with the support of GEF. Colombia's government will leave the country with the best patrimony, preservation of peace and the protection of the environment, conscious that for Colombians, peace is part of our nature. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker is Minister of Environment and Forest from Bangladesh, His Excellency Mr. Nazrul Islam Mahmoud.
Mr. Chairperson, distinguished heads of delegates, representatives of agencies and civil society organizations, ladies and gentlemen. On behalf of the government of People's Republic of Bangladesh, I would like to express my sincere appreciation to the government and the peoples of Vietnam for extending a warm welcome and excellent arrangements in hosting the 6th GEF Assembly. I would like I would also like to congratulate the GEF Secretariat and the sponsors for organizing the 6th GEF Assembly meticulously and successfully. Bangladesh acknowledges the gracious support of GEF that has played a significant role for conserving the environment and promoting the well-being of the people of Bangladesh. Anyone looking at its impact can see the results in the areas of biodiversity conservation, in ecological critical areas, adaptation through afforestation, activities towards mitigation, and implementation of the National Biosafety Framework, to name a few. To support and receive from the GEF helped Bangladesh comply with some of the obligations of the Convention on Environment. The projects taken through GEF finding upheld Bangladesh's commitment to the world community to conserve the environment and ensure global benefits. Mr. Chairman, Bangladesh is both the most vulnerable to the adverse impacts of climate change and environmental degradation. Bangladesh is located in a unique way where we have Bay of Bengal on the south, and the climate change has resulted in more frequent cyclones, tidal upsurge, and resulting in salinity incursion into our land. And it is expected that if no intervention is done, almost 1/4 of the country is going to be affected by the climate change. On the north, we have the Himalayas, again because of the climate change. The melting of the snow in the Himalayas is going to be accelerated, resulting in a higher flow of water during the monsoon, where already we have too much of water, resulting in floods. We have three of the largest rivers, the Ganges, the Brahmaputra, the Meghna, passing through Bangladesh, of which only 7% of the catchment area is in Bangladesh and 93% of the catchment area is outside Bangladesh. And as a result, we have no control over this water flow. And moreover, we have transboundary withdrawal of water, resulting in tremendous adverse effect on land degradation in the southwestern region of Bangladesh. So here, the rural population overwhelmingly relies on our rich biodiversity and ecosystem for their livelihoods. Towards conserving our rich biodiversity and ecosystems in the face of the climate change and extreme events, we would urge the Assembly to reconsider the existing criteria determining country allocation, especially for the case of GEF Trust Fund. As the allocation is getting reduced, we could not meet all the challenges to enhance our capacity towards global environment problems for which we are innocent victims. In this backdrop, we would urge for substantial increase of allocation in GEF Trust Fund and other baskets to address vulnerabilities faced by countries like Bangladesh and consider them a measure for GEF resource allocation in the future. At the moment, the GEF resource allocation does not include vulnerability as a factor, and we feel very strongly that this should be actually embedded in resource allocation formulation. Towards ensuring country-driven projects and programs, we further call for meaningful actions and systems to be introduced so that the GEF fund could directly be accessed by the countries in a fast-track manner, which could substantially reduce transaction costs and enhance country ownership and timeliness of project implementation. Direct access to the GEF resources will also contribute much more towards building a stronger capacity of the countries to manage global and local environmental problems. In the face of burgeoning impacts of climate change, loss of biodiversity, and land degradation, GEF needs to continue its crucial role as a catalyst for global environmental actions. We are happy to see donors' commitment to conserve the global environment and maintain their contributions to the 7th replenishment of the GEF Trust Fund. But I must point out that in the 6th replenishment, we had $4.43 billion committed, and this time it has come down to 4.1, and if you exclude the amount which is carried over from the 6th replenishment, then the amount is really substantially reduced. We have to see to it that this trend is reversed. However, the contribution pledged by the developed countries are not adequate to address the pressure on environment and to hold back the trend of degradation. The severity of the global environment risks today is even greater, and that provides a compelling rationale for an increased size of the GEF 7 replenishment than previous one. Here, I would like to mention some of the achievements of Bangladesh in our fight against this climate change and protecting the environment. Bangladesh, we have supplied almost solar power to almost 6 million households. And according to UN, this is the fastest growing solar program anywhere in the world in terms of households. We have provided 2 million environment-friendly cookers to different households. We have created from our own resources a climate change trust fund for almost $350 million, where in last 10 years we have got about 1,000 projects already completed. And in terms of in the plastic field, we have already banned our plastic bags, utilization of plastic bags, and we are almost on the verge of replacing the plastic bags by jute bags, which is being in the process of being produced in Bangladesh, which will be biodegradable. Now, with 27 years experience of GEF has been dealing with global environment issues through innovation and lesson learning. We congratulate CEO Dr. Naoka Ishii for her efforts towards directing GEF focus on transformational change through inter alia impact programs in a state of incremental change by standalone projects. This will lead the countries towards pursuing holistic approaches of formulating and implementing projects in line with countries' development priorities. I'm confident that this innovative approach will bring about broader impacts in the area of environmental management, ensuring sustainability of the global environmental benefits. However, there are risks of added complexity relating to the design and implementation of the integrated program. In this context, communication between the GEF, implementing agencies, beneficiary countries, and in-country stakeholders is a key to achieve the objectives of the program. We think it is necessary that the GEF Secretariat, agencies, and the government work cohesively to ensure the quality of the program as a whole and facilitate their implementation within the country. Finally, my delegation is looking forward to a very dynamic and revitalized GEF based on the 5 elements of Sustainability Compact: strategy, innovation, equity, accessibility, and focus. We want to see vigorous engagement of GEF in addressing global environmental problems. We wish GEF will play a stronger role in the as the leading financial mechanism to implement the environmental conventions. Before I conclude, I wish to thank all the participants in yesterday's opening ceremony, where we have learned a lot about the environment, and what I was most impressed was the participation of the private sector. And I believe this participation of private sector with the government will ensure a much quicker way of preserving our environment. The private sector has ultimately realized that their profit today is not the ultimate, it is the profit over a long period of time, which is important, and that is why they have come forward, and we must use this opportunity. We wish GEF to become a champion of environment in 2020, as envisaged in GEF 2020 strategy, and its more effective role to make the planet livable for all of us. I thank you all. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next speaker is Director for Human Resource Development Division from South Korea Institute for Environmental Human Resources Development, Mr. Beom-Sik. 5 minutes. I remind you of 5 minutes.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Excellencies, distinguished delegates, the Republic of Korea would like to join the other countries in thanking our host, Vietnam, for their hospitality and the preparation for this assembly in this beautiful city of Da Nang. We also like to take this opportunity to congratulate Vietnam for their continued effort to pursue sustainability in the midst of their fast economic growth. Mr. Chairman, as the Madame CEO said so eloquently in the opening ceremony, we now depart on a new journey of GEF. As we start the new journey, the Assembly gives us the time for reflection as well as devising a new strategy for the challenges that we will face in the next 4 years. GEF has made tremendous achievement during the last 27 years. As highlighted in the 6th overall performance study, GEF continues to fulfill the special mandate that was bestowed on this organization. In this regard, the Republic of Korea is happy that the global community has once again recognized GEF and shown its commitment through the 7th replenishment process. As we move forward, however, we are alarmed by the fact that the environmental challenges are much greater than what we forecasted in 1992. As the science indicates, the global climate change is accelerating, and the loss of biodiversity has already surpassed the planetary boundaries. However, the finance necessary to address these challenges are not increasing at the rate that is proportional to the challenges. It is without doubt that the global community needs to continue its effort to harness the necessary finance and develop the necessary technologies. But for GEF, this also means that we need to be more efficient and adaptive. In order to do this, a close attention is due to what the OPS and the Scientific and the Technological Advisory Panel have said. The global landscape for environmental finance is evolving. In this new landscape, GEF is best positioned to address the interconnectedness of the environmental challenges. With a mandate over biodiversity, climate change, international waters, chemicals and waste, and land degradation, GEF should continue to focus on urgent areas with huge impact across multiple environmental challenges. And yes, this is much easier said than done, but GEF should continue to work in pursuing the integrative principle in its programming based on scientific and technological merits. The success will not come overnight, and this effort should be an adaptive process with continued effort for refinement. Mr. Chairman, the Republic of Korea very much value the special role GEF has on addressing global environmental challenges. We will continue to support GEF in the next journey ahead, and the process has already begun within the government to allocate the necessary finance. We'll also continue to seek partnership with GEF wherever possible, in particular in many of our bilateral and multilateral environmental development programs that we have with CBD, IUCN, and other international mechanisms. Thank you very much.
And thank you. Next speaker is Deputy Minister of Tourism and Environment from Albania, Ms. Onela Kuci.
Distinguished Chairman and Secretary, Excellencies, Ministers, ladies and gentlemen. It is a great pleasure for me to be here with you today and to address this Assembly for a Global Environmental Facility. On behalf of the Government of Albania, I would like to thank the Government of Vietnam and the City of Da Nang for hosting us to this great event. I would like also to congratulate Mrs. Naoko Ishii and every member of the Council of the GEF for their leadership to a successful replenishment of the GEF, and special thanks to all of the donor countries that made this replenishment possible. Albania has benefited from GEF resources since in its early days of operation. Thanks to GEF resources, channeled through over 50 projects and the support of its implementing agencies such as UNDP, World Bank and UNEP, Albania has put systems in place to protecting its unique biodiversity, reporting to different conventions such as UNFCCC, UNCCD, CBD, and implementing priority measures deriving from the commitments under these conventions. GEF resources have contributed towards expansion of protected areas, which today amount for 60% of the territory, transforming the market for solar water heaters, sustaining livelihoods of vulnerable communities living by river deltas and protected lakes, rivers and wetlands. Despite of such progress, the status of environment in Albania is far from where it should be. As a country with economy in transition, a significant amount of natural resources of Albania have been compromised and used unsustainably. Efforts are put into place to reverse this trend. In this regard, I am very pleased to inform you today that the government of Albania has made environment as key priority and has shared a vision for a clean, green, healthy, and close to people environment. What does this mean for Albania's people? For the first time, the government of Albania is considering environmental protection as an emergency issue, for which we have engaged even the army to help in cleaning rivers, illegal dump sites, and protected areas. Under this environmental emergency, the Albanian government has undertaken drastic measures such as banning hunting, moratorium of tree cutting, or banning the use of plastic bags, with a lot more of other drastic measures being under discussion. We are taking into full consideration the social and economic impacts of our measures as we are using the golden model on engaging with academia and researchers, businesses and government at both levels, local and central. Through different campaigns and educational channels, we are bringing environment very close to people's heart and have them lead our battles with pollution. We are revising and strengthening environmental protection curricula in our middle and high school system. We are very optimistic in achieving our goals because we have the support of and working closely with the young population who are better educated on environmental issues so that can embrace the change easier and faster. We are sharing our experience and taking a leadership role in the region through regional projects and initiatives developed and implemented with our neighbors, with whom we are sharing 1/3 of all species of Europe worldwide flora and fauna. Albania has initiated a regional campaign for protection of Adriatic Sea from marine debris and promotion of sustainable tourism between Albania, Croatia and Montenegro since February 2018. On that regard, the work of the Ministry of Tourism and Environment has become a perpetuum of 365 days per year to have a clean and green environment. Albania stands ready to advance global agenda through local countries' actions by scaling up important reforms in the country in the areas such as the ones related to Clean and Green Albania 2020 that have in focus sustainable urban systems and promotion of sustainable tourism. We are working hard to make efficient our last campaign, Clean and Green, with cleanup days, monitoring the services quality, and implement the polluter pays principle. I share this information with you to point that if there is a political will to shift the attention of the environment, it can go as far as making it a goal to be achieved. Dear colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, we have ambitious plans but insufficient resources. The GEF support is crucial for Albania, and we believe that with the efficient, effective, and smart programming of the country allocation, we will be able to leverage the environment finance needed to achieve our ambitious plan. We strongly believe in catalyzing and transformation power of the GEF resources and looking forward to an effective use of GEF 7 resources to paradigm shifting of sustainable use of resources, reducing waste and transiting to low emission and resilient development. Lastly, allow me to thank the GEF and its implementing agency again for all the assistance given so far. I would also like to thank every man and woman to this assembly that is devoted to protecting our environment. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next speaker is Deputy Secretary General, Mr. John Barstow from Ramsar Convention on Wetlands.
I'd like to start by thanking the government of Vietnam for the very warm welcome to your wonderful country, and to thank the GEF Secretariat for the excellent organization of this assembly. Mr. Chairman, ladies and gentlemen, healthy natural wetlands are critical for human survival. They include some of the world's most productive ecosystems, leading to countless benefits. Wetlands include permanently or seasonally inundated freshwater habitats, including lakes, rivers, and marshes, along with coastal marine areas, such as lagoons, mangroves, and coral reefs. Almost all of the world's consumption of fresh water is drawn either directly or indirectly from wetlands. More than 1 billion people depend on wetlands for a living. Wetlands are used for transport and hydropower. They help to mitigate floods, protect coastlines, and store and sequester carbon. Importantly, they play a critical role in the focal area strategies of biodiversity, climate change, and international waters financed by the GEF. The GEF has taken into account the importance of wetlands since its inception, leading to direct GEF investment totaling some $2 billion in grants, leveraging over $11 billion in co-financing towards projects entirely focused on wetlands or as part of projects with significant wetland components. These projects have been funded out of the biodiversity, climate change, land degradation, and international waters focal areas, highlighting that wetlands are pivotal for securing multiple environmental services and supporting a range of terrestrial and marine systems. As much as wetlands are vital to us and our survival, they face many challenges. The remaining natural wetlands cover only a fraction of their original area as a result of drainage and land conversion. Up to 87% of the global wetland resource has been lost since 1700. We lose wetlands 3 times faster than natural forests. These are the latest findings of the Global Wetlands Outlook, which will be released in October this year in the weeks leading to the 13th meeting of the Conference of Parties to the Ramsar Convention on Wetlands. The Ramsar Convention provides a platform like no other to foster collaboration and partnership in support of the UN Sustainable Development Goals and other global initiatives and processes, including the Aichi biodiversity targets, the Paris Agreement, and the Sendai framework, through providing the best available data, advice, and policy recommendations to enable national governments to realize the benefits of rich, functional wetlands. The Ramsar Strategic Plan 2016 to 2024 and its targets linked to the Sustainable Development Goals and to at least 75 of the associated SDG targets. Critical to this is the Convention's role in reporting on wetland extent, drawing on information from national reports, and its designation as a co-custodian with the United Nations Environment Programme of SDG Indicator 661 on wetland extent. One of the obligations of contracting parties to the Ramsar Convention is cooperation across national boundaries on transboundary wetlands and shared wetland systems. There is therefore a strong correlation with the GEF's programme on the international waters, through which GEF helps countries jointly manage their transboundary surface water basins, groundwater basins, and coastal and marine systems. In GEF 7 programming directions, the International Waters Focal Area investments will support the work of the UN Watercourses Convention and the UNECE Water Convention, the UN Conventions on Law of the Sea, and the Ramsar Convention on Wetlands. In this regard, the alignment of the Ramsar Strategic Plan with the SDGs, HE targets, and the 4-year framework of programme and priorities for the 7th replenishment of the GEF Trust Fund represent an important opportunity by countries to invest in improved management, restoration, and best use practices for wetlands through national and regional actions, to ensure they continue to provide a range of social and economic benefits. We believe that through the collective effort, determination, and shared ambition of contracting parties and our partners, the political awareness and global recognition of wetlands can be significantly improved, and the need for their protection and sustainable use will attract unprecedented political, financial, and technical support in the coming years to reverse the trend of wetland loss. We trust that GEF 7 will serve as a mechanism to ensure this valuable resource, the wetlands, is conserved, restored when needed, and used wisely. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next speaker is Executive Secretary Mr. Rolf Peje from Basel, Rotterdam, and Stockholm Conventions.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Ministers, distinguished delegates, Chairperson, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. It is indeed an honor for me to address today the 6th Assembly of the GEF here in Da Nang. Let me take this opportunity to thank the government of Vietnam and its people for its wonderful hospitality and excellent organization of this event. I have noted with great satisfaction the successful conclusion of the 7th replenishment of the GEF. I would like to congratulate Naoko and her team and Axel for their extraordinary achievement of gathering support for a strong $4 billion replenishment after a long journey of consultations and exchanges. The Chemicals and Waste Cluster will benefit from the impact programs and multifocal area programming. I am therefore convinced that the focus on innovation and effective programming will compensate the shortfall of funding for the work on POPs in GEF 7. Thank you all, the supporters in the Council, and also the replenishment meetings participants, to ensure that we have a very strong chemicals and waste focal area allocation, as this is fundamentally important in contributing to the implementation of the SDGs, Agenda 2030, and building resilience for the world's poor and most vulnerable. The decisions taken by the last meeting of the Stockholm Conference of the Parties support this broad and global agenda. It encouraged, among others, the GEF to identify opportunities of integrated programming to achieve synergies and also attaining the chemicals and waste-related sustainable development goals. I've also noted with satisfaction that all of the Conference of the Parties approved priorities for the persistent organic pollutants for the period 2018 to 2022 have been included in the GEF 7 programming strategy for chemicals and waste, which include the need to develop and deploy products, methods and strategies as alternatives to more persistent organic pollutants. Secondly, the continuation of work in the field of legacy POPs, or persistent organic pollutants, and the work on best available technologies and environmental practices. Here, I would like to single out the looming 2025 deadline for PCBs, which is a chemical used in electrical transformers, which will fall within the GEF 7 and GEF 8 cycles. And finally, we need to emphasize the need to enhance support and technical assistance to facilitate implementation at the national level, including strengthening legislation, regulation, and the updating of national implementation plans by countries. Ministers, distinguished delegates, chairperson, ladies and gentlemen, however, much remains to be done. First, the needs exceeded by far the availability of the funding. Under the Stockholm Convention, we continue to list new chemicals, and we'll have 28 regulated substances by the end of this year. It is also clear that we need to engage more with the private sector, noting that the chemicals and consumer industry generates many trillions of dollars of turnover in that sector. At the same time, we need to ensure that we can operate in the most efficient and effective environment. It is laudable that the GEF Secretariat has taken up key conclusions of the GEF Independent Evaluation Office with regards to increasing transparency of the project cycle and minimizing any avoidable delays in managing the pipeline in the chemical and waste focal area. This will indeed be critical to achieve the envisaged global environmental benefits we have singled out in the GEF 7. To achieve the impact we want, we need to look beyond the current implementation arrangements. We need to engage the new project agencies, particularly in the chemicals and waste cluster, and this will be vital. I am glad to announce that I have met some of these organizations in the past few months, and particularly pleased to have seen a great willingness for us to continue to work in the chemicals and waste projects for the benefit of the countries and of the constituency of the GEF. Let me conclude by stating that much is at stake at the 7th replenishment of the GEF. First, the impact of the work on gender equality in the chemicals and waste cluster deserves our highest attention. I am fully committed to continue the trailblazing gender work of the Secretariat with continued support from key donors. Second, we are witnessing the emergence of waste as a critical planetary and transboundary issue. It is encouraging to see increasing support from the international community to address waste in all its different forms. I'm equally encouraged to see the increase in financial support from our key donors for this important area of work. The BRS conventions, or the Basel, Rotterdam, and Stockholm conventions, are adding their share to this important area of work. The Secretariat will focus in the run-up to our Conference of the Parties next year on mandated activities in the field of plastic waste, and specifically on electronic waste and household waste. This also includes work on marine litter and microplastics, for which we have received financial support from several donors. And finally, we need to step up our efforts to strengthening national capacities for the implementation of the chemicals and waste conventions. The work of the GEF, the technical assistance program of the Secretariat, and the special programs on institutional strengthening at the national level are equally important to achieve this important goal. Ladies and gentlemen, let me end my intervention by highlighting the need to continue to support and expand GEF support to least development countries and small island developing states. With those few words, Mr. Chairman, I thank you.
Thank you very much. Now we have the situation that there are 8 speakers left, but it's lunch time. Lunch will be the same procedure as yesterday. Buses are outside, and head of delegations or their representative of head of delegations are welcome to the Ocean Ballroom at the lunch hotel. Anyway, of those who want to continue to hold their speeches, it may be possible into the lunchtime, but on the other hand, Secretary here says that every speech will be posted on the website. So then I give the floor to you to continue.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. As the chairman has just said, the lunch is ready and the buses are leaving. So I will continue with a list for those who wish to stay. And if you just wish to have your statement posted on the website, just let me know, and we will do it that way. So the next person on the list is the Deputy Minister of Finance and Administration of the Ministry of Environment and Natural Resources of Guatemala, Mr. Julio Recinos Castañeda.
Muchas gracias a todos. En nombre
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. On behalf of the President of Guatemala, Mr. Jimmy Morales, on behalf of the Minister for the Environment and Natural Resources of Guatemala, Mr. Alfonso Rafael Alonso Vargas, I would like to cordially thank all the delegations and the Secretariat of the GEF, especially the Secretary who's here with us. Guatemala is a multi-ethnic, pluricultural and multilingual country, and with a great variety of natural resources and ecosystem services that has many ancestral knowledge spots. We recognize the basic principles and the guarantees of the environmental conventions with regards to climate change, biodiversity, desertification, and chemical products, especially with regards to gender equality, the rights of the indigenous peoples, local communities, migrants, children, persons in vulnerable situations, and the empowerment of women. Guatemala considers that the efforts being made at the world level to reach the global goal established in the Paris Agreement is of great value. The Paris Agreement seeks to maintain the rise in temperature below 1.5 to 2 grades and to limit in 1.5 centigrades with regards to pre-industrial countries. This objective is fundamental for our country and therefore for humanity. Our actions and decisions of today will define our future. So we call on industrialized countries to continue making efforts to reduce the pollution levels worldwide. Guatemala joins those countries that are affected by climate change. As a highly vulnerable country, we also suffer from the effects of climate change and the effects they're having on biodiversity, degradation, and desertification. An extreme event that happened in Guatemala recently was the eruption of the Volcán de Fuego, which affected more than 1 million people in the areas neighboring the volcano. This eruption has already consequences, especially in food security in the area, on biodiversity, and the degradation of the affected area, and also in the migration of the communities affected. This is an example of the high level of vulnerability of our region, and in particular of our country. Guatemala underscores the importance that the GEF has, that they should not reduce the star allocations in the 7th replenishment, especially in the highly vulnerable countries. Well, this will surely directly affect the efforts that we are making at the national level in the struggle against environmental problems. It is important for Guatemala to underscore the support of GEF, which we've received to now, which added to the national efforts that were implemented, like, for example, biobardas, which are made by the communities, and they are eliminating waste from the rivers, waste that is produced by the neighboring communities, in fact. It is important to point out that the President of the Republic of Guatemala, Mr. Jimmy Morales Cabrera, has included as one of the main pillars of his government's plan the protection and conservation of the environment. We are closely working with the mayors of the 22 departments of the country. And we have the political will from the Minister of the Environment for Guatemala, Alfonso Alonso. Guatemala considers that the financial support of the Global Environment Fund in thematic areas like climate change, land degradation, biodiversity, international waters and chemical products and waste is fundamental to continue to add to the national efforts that we are already implementing. Guatemala welcomes the proposal of the new impact programs of the 7th GEF replenishment. We consider that it's necessary to have a wider socialization of this new methodology to access resources. Guatemala makes a special call on GEF so that the way of calculating the ceilings for the new GEF 7th replenishment should not affect in a negative manner these countries, developing countries, who are highly vulnerable, as is the case of my country, Guatemala. Finally, we believe that the new projects and programs that will be financed with GEF resources in our country will have a very positive impact on the beneficiary communities at the short, medium, and long term. These projects will be part of the national efforts that are already being implemented, so we request that the internal processes of revision, approval of these new projects and programs should be standardized so we can go to implementation as soon as possible in accordance with the formulation and planning. Thank you to all the delegates and ministers who are participating here, and in particular, thank you to the people and government of Vietnam for this very special hospitality. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I now give the floor to the Director General, Environment Management Authority of Rwanda, Mr. Koleta Ruhamya. Sorry, Ms. Koleta Ruhamya.
Excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, I'm very delighted and honored to address this special and important gathering. I would like to start by thanking the government of Vietnam for a very warm welcome to this beautiful country since our arrival here. I also thank the GEF Secretariat for a very well-organized meeting and the success in leading the GEF 7 replenishment negotiation process. The government of Rwanda appreciates all the support given to us for a better management of our environment and natural resources, and we are committed to build on the success achieved so far to shape our plans and programs for the greater impact of the country and the world at large. Excellencies, distinguished guests, we believe that the inclusive economic growth and the development targets set cannot be achieved without using our natural resources efficiently, protecting our environment, and promoting a climate-resilient economy that ensures improved living standards for our people today and the generation to come. We recently approved the National Strategy for Transformation, 2017 to 2024. And this was developed with 3 pillars, of which one of them is economic transformation, with one of the specific objective to sustainably exploit our natural resources and protect the environment. In order to ensure that we are in the right path to realize the journey through Vision 2020 towards Vision 2050, we have embarked on enhancing partnership and collaboration within and beyond our borders. And I believe this is a call for all of us in this room and beyond. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, the situation does not allow us to slow the pace, especially if we want to achieve more with less resources. We have to strengthen our partnership between local and central governments, private and public institutions, men and women, countries and regions. With reference to Sustainable Development Goals number 17, Partnership for Growth, we should not be misled just because the goal is last on the list. It holds a very important and strong message to achieve the rest. Let me conclude by a special call for all of us to have more commitment than ever before in ensuring collective efforts for a sustainable and climate resilient economy for our people. I thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I offer the floor to His Excellency the Minister of Environment and Sustainable Development of Senegal, Mr. Mamet Dieng.
Thank you very much. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, first of all, I would like to express on behalf of Senegal and the President Mactar, my gratitude to the government of Vietnam for the welcome that was given to my delegation. I would like also to thank you for the support of the Secretariat of GEF through the support that was given to Senegal and to the constituency of Sahel and West Africa to prepare this meeting. We are starting GEF 7 in a context where our planet is being faced with challenges in the environment that are catastrophic, with catastrophic impact for our countries that are quite vulnerable. Global warming, loss of biodiversity, degradation of land, and plastic pollution on Earth, but also in the oceans, are obstacles to socio-economic development. In such context, we need to improve our resilience to environmental shocks while having technical financial capacities that would be appropriate. In this context, GEF is obviously a source of hope for us. Since our entry to GEF, Senegal has received more than $60 million, which enabled us to have $300 million as co-financing for the implementation of projects for climate change, biodiversity, degradation of land, organic pollution, and international waters. We have also launched very concrete actions that will have an impact for the health of our people and on the environment if we know how to seize the opportunities that we are given, to scale them up and have all the activities that would be more sustainable. In GEF 5 and 6, we have adopted legal instruments for the energy in architecture, and we have new architects that are building such. Buildings were constructed or built with this new concept, and we also have based this architecture on traditional knowledge. Through the Convention of Minamata, we have equipped and organized those miners of gold that do not use mercury anymore. With the integrated pilot programs on durable urban cities and food security, we have launched the basis for urban development on one hand and agriculture on the other that would be more elaborate and more resilient, that would be a synergy with the different stakeholders. GEF 7 will enable us to improve these activities, to diversify them, and then to scale them up. Ladies and gentlemen, the countries of our constituency in Sahel and West Africa have a common point on the environment, desertification, and degradation of land. But for some of us, as Senegal, we have a coastline that is fragile because of erosion through climatic change. That's why we are congratulating the GEF in this domain. I would like also to underline the initiatives that were developed in these dynamics in order to have a synergy between products. For instance, the program WACA, that is a management of the West African coastline. And I see that the entities here for financial mechanism in the UN Convention, Green Fund, and the GEF are thinking about a collaboration to harmonize the process and improve the impact of available resources. Ladies and gentlemen, indeed, resources are diminishing for the protection of the environment. The environment is being deteriorated by our behavior. We have to have imagination in order to identify new approaches that would be tipping points. That is why the new strategy of GEF to allocate funds for maximum impact through the transformation of urban system, food system, and energy system would be pertinent. The promotion of the private-public partnership should be much to scale, and we appreciate this new approach in the institutional financial proposal of new programs and the fundamental role that GEF has for the synergy of programs for the institution, private partners, technical partners, and financial partners. I would like to express the interest that Senegal has in the program of microfinancing from GEF. Even though that the resources are less today, this program should be supported to enable the poor communities to have access to necessary resources for the implementation of projects to improve their livelihoods. And the countries would have the support of GEF, they will need to find new financial mechanism. That's why I would like here to call upon the General Assembly so that a specific attention be given to the development of such system. And then I have to say in Senegal, microfinancing have shown that it improves the livelihood of our people who were the beneficiaries. And I would like to say that GEF 7 should be a new page in the history of GEF. It should be marked by the pertinence of the choice of programs that are to be implemented, but characterized also by the efficiency in our approach through a better coordination of stakeholders and an implementation of common resources to improve the chances for our objective that we have chosen in the environment and the livelihood of our population. This collaboration should have better results for GEF to protect the environment and their community and the communities. Thank you very much for your kind attention.
Thank you very much. I give the floor to His Excellency the Minister of State for Environment and Energy of the Maldives, Mr. Abdul Mateen Mohamed.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum and very good afternoon. Excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. First of all, let me take the opportunity to thank you the Secretariat and the Government of Vietnam for the kind hospitality and excellent hospitality at this beautiful city of Da Nang. Mr. Chair, the GEF has been an instrumental mechanism of international environmental governance and continues to play a catalytic role in systemic and transformational change. As the financial mechanism for several multilateral environmental agreements, the GEF is uniquely positioned to provide integrated and holistic solutions to the global environmental challenges we face today. Let me also take this opportunity to thank the CEO and participants of the replenishment process for the successful conclusion of the negotiations of GEF 7. While we remain concerned of the reduction of the overall envelope, we believe it also provides an opportunity to do more with increased efficiency and targeted interventions. We also welcome the innovative program and directions for GEF 7, but reiterate the importance of the GEF to be responsive to the needs and priorities of the recipient countries. This must also be balanced with the need to maximize global environmental benefits and achieve the goals and decisions of the conventions that GEF serves. It is also imperative that the GEF take into account the inherent vulnerabilities of small island developing states and ensure that adequate support is provided to states in their effort to address climate change, biodiversity loss, environmental degradation, chemical and waste issues. I urge the Secretariat and GEF partners to assist states in this regard. Mr. Chair, as in the fifth GEF Assembly, my minister raised concerns on behalf of the South Asian constituency on the project operation modalities, including the large lag time between project formulation and endorsement. While we appreciate the efforts made by Secretariat and GEF agencies in streamlining the process, there is much more that can be done to improve the efficiency in this process. This also requires increase in the capacity of the recipient countries to formulate and implement the project. Mr. Chair, we welcome the efforts made by GEF to increase its transparency and further integrate gender issues into its work. Indeed, it's imperative that we recognize women and girls as catalytic agents of change and progress. If we are to address global environmental issues, the solutions we seek must be inclusive and improve the life and well-being of all and ensure that everyone can participate and be part of the solution. I also take the opportunity to note the important role of the GEF Small Grant Program in helping to address local environmental issues and contributing towards sustainable livelihood, particularly in rural communities and for indigenous communities and women. I commend the CSOs in our countries for their active and commendable role. It is indeed important that we continue to make space and engage all stakeholders, including the private sector and academia, in the process. Mr. Chair, ladies and gentlemen, we look forward for more focused and action-oriented work during the next cycle that substantively and progressively works towards reaching our goals. And before I conclude, let me reiterate my appreciation for the proper arrangement for the Assembly. I look forward to fruitful discussions that allow for a stronger GEF, better poised to carry out its mandate. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Finalement, je donne la parole à Madame la vice-ministre pour l'Environnement et le Développement durable de la Côte d'Ivoire, Madame Nasser Kaba.
Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, it is with great pleasure that I would like to address my thanks on behalf of Côte d'Ivoire and my salutation to the government and to the people of Vietnam for the successful organization of the 6th GEF Assembly and for the quality of the welcome that was given to my delegation. Allow me also to congratulate GEF for the results that were gained in the preservation of the world environment and the promotion of sustainable development. Ladies and gentlemen, our environment is also feeling pressures. The reduction of biodiversity is keeping on. Desertification is progressing on land that were fertile. The climatic change has effects, and natural catastrophes are frequent and more destructive. Developing countries are more and more vulnerable, and pollution of air, water, and oceans will deprive millions of people of a decent livelihood. In my country, we have witnessed a massive destruction of our forest cover after the socio-political crisis that lasted about 10 years in my country, which brought about difficulties in the protection of our environment. But since the resumption of our activities, Côte d'Ivoire has launched and pursues actions of a large scale on several issues on the environment and sustainable development. Our hope is great to relaunch strategies for the preservation of the national and global environment in collaboration with all countries that are members of GEF. It is true that this will require even more resources, and there we would like to commend the efforts of GEF for the resources allocated to each country. But for nations, and especially for developing countries, we would request more financial and technical means. Ladies and gentlemen, sustainable development needs a long-term perspective and an effective participation of all parties and stakeholders in the forming of policies, in decision-makings, and in launching initiatives at all levels. We would like to reaffirm our commitment to give priorities to the fight against phenomena that are threatening development in our countries. But thus, we will need more financial and technical resources to fight against the deterioration of natural resources and participate to the vision of GEF through the impact programs that we approve of. We would like also to tell you our care for the microfinancing programs and for the star resources that we would like to see improve. My country is a donor and receiving country, and we salute the negotiations in which we have taken part for the replenishment of resources for GEF 7. Let's hope that we will have the path to make better resolutions for the preservation of the environment, which is our patrimony for all the people. Thank you.
Thank you very much, madam. Thank you all. I hope you enjoy your lunch. We'll see you this afternoon. Thank you.